This podcast is a proud member of Culture Box. Whether you enjoy geeky reviews, comedy, or original fiction, you can open up the Culture Box and find something excellent for your soul. Point your web browser to culturebox.media.
The Cellcast is recorded in front of a live streaming audience.
Hello, Kaiju lovers, and welcome to another special report from the Monster Island Film Vaulta podcast, seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. Yes, and of course Jimmy is here to help manage things during this live stream. This is going out to our YouTube channel, and also the audio will be sent out as a special bonus podcast episode for everyone to listen to. Everybody start jumping into the chat as quickly as you can, but here, joining me today is not one, but two special guests in yet another epic crossover between our two shows, Drew and Jacob from the Cellcast.
Hello, cartoon lovers! Turtle soup, anybody?
Yeah, I'm with Jimmy. I'm going to have to trademark this catchphrase, or if people are just going to keep stealing it. But can we... Guys, I have to ask, can we finally talk about something where we're not losing our minds?
Okay. Maybe.
Because this is
in this?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is our third recording in about 2 months together, and the other two times we were losing our freaking minds. Once before the worst thing in the Monsterverse, aka Skull Island, and then for that freaking Titanic movie.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, tentacles. Tentacles.
He's still not on the island.
That's no problem.
Yeah, that ice throwing abomination is still not on the island, and yeah, he's not going to be on the island.
I bet he's not even at the beta site.
I don't think he's on anything. I think they're leaving him in the Arctic, hoping he sinks another Titanic or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll see. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't sink his own franchise at this point, because that. Just go listen to the Legend of Titanic episode for the Cellcast, people. You'll understand the frustration.
And just remember, there's a third film.
Wait, what? What?
There's a sequel. There's a sequel to this, to Titanic.
Mm-hmm. Wait. I thought there were two movies and a TV show.
He was Jacob was thinking the third animated Titanic film, because that includes Titanic, The Legend Goes On.
Oh.
But no, the sequel then goes to Atlantis and the...
I know about that sequel.
Three.
I was I thought there were... I thought this particular franchise had two movies and two... Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We are here, gentlemen, to talk about an actual anime, not a fake anime, like Skull Island. I don't care what anyone says. Fake anime. It is a fake anime. We're here.
Well, some elements may have been animated better, but we'll get to that.
We'll get into that. But we're here to talk about Gamera Rebirth, the new anime on Netflix from the Titanic Terrapin, the Guardian of the Universe, the friend to all children. Let's just get all of his titles in there. Gamera himself. So this should be interesting. As usual, whenever I come across anything animated in kaiju, I have to have you guys on. It's a requirement.
Since we found each other anyway.
Yeah, since we found each other. Although I don't think I covered too many animated things before I discovered you guys.
True.
That's the funny thing. So, let's get right into it, shall we? Let's get right into it. So, I thought we could start a little bit by talking about our history with Gamera. Because, obviously, I'm the kaiju guy. Mm-hmm. And you guys are still pretty new to this, but I was curious,
I'm more into it than Jacob is.
Okay.
Fair warning.
Okay, but I'm curious because the funny thing is that even though I am the kaiju guy, my history with Gamera is still a little bit different and also, weirdly enough, a little bit more recent than it is for a lot of other people in the kaiju fandom. But what about you guys?
So I was gifted the MST3K Gamera box set many years ago.
Mm-hmm. Hence why I have that on the screen.
And I had no idea who Gamera was.
Oh, really?
At the time, I think this was I was just then getting into like Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been looking for the Godzilla MST3K episodes. Not that I knew at the time you couldn't find them.
Well, only one ever got released, and then Toho said no-ho, and the other one never saw the light of day.
It was sad, really. But my mom was nice enough to buy this for me for Christmas, buy the MST3K Gamera set for Christmas. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm be interested in this sort of thing. And then I watched the first one and then didn't watch the rest of them until many, many years later. I did not watch the rest of them until literally 2 months ago, when with a fluke, I happened to get both the Showa and Heisei box sets, like really at a really good price. And so I started working through the Showa era and got I got past Virus. I don't remember which movie I stopped at, but
yes, we know that one's important to you.
I think I got one past that. I don't remember which one it was.
Gearon.
Gearon. Yes, I saw Gearon. I remember Knife Face.
Knifehead, the original Knifehead.
Yes. So yeah, I got that far, and then this came up faster than I could keep going. So.
So when you say you didn't get,
I have seen the first Heisei movie,
Guardian of the Universe.
Guardian of the Universe. I have seen that, but I was in the middle of something else at the time and wasn't able to give it my full attention.
Mm-hmm. So
most of what I know is from you, Nate.
Okay, I was gonna say. So you mentioned the MST3K episodes. How many of those have you seen? Is it just one?
I saw just the first one.
Just the first one. So for Giant Monster Gamera, for the original.
Yes. Oh, I have actually seen the riff tracks of Gamera with 2 M's.
Yeah, Gamera the Invincible, which is the American re-edit of the original movie.
Yeah. So I've seen both of those.
Okay. And there is also a 6th. MST3K famously did 5 of them, 5 Gamera movies back in the day, thanks to Sandy Frank. Sandy Frank, he's the source of all our pain. But and that's also where the famous Gamera song came from.
Yes,
which
that song has ruined me, by the way.
Yeah, it's ruined everybody. But
because now I can't hear the Gamera march without going, Gamera is really neat. He is filled with turtle meat.
yeah, I understand that. But like I was saying, what your story is actually pretty common. A lot of people were of a certain age, I should say, were introduced to Gamera through MST3K. I was not, interestingly. But Jacob, what is your history with Gamera?
Yes. So kind of like
this will be short.
Yes, it's going to be short. So kind of like Star Wars Master Apprentice. So apparently you are Drew's master. He learns from you. I
never said this.
I'm making an analogy here. Come on. And so then I learned from my kaiju master, where I learn more about him because he loves kaiju. Anything comes up, it's
I'm getting more into it.
And so I learned more. I've learned from this podcast and him talking about the world of kaiju and learning. He talks about Gamera. It's like Gamera. And it's like, oh, it's a turtle. Oh, okay.
Oh, I forgot. I did have one other earlier run-in with Gamera, and that was when he showed up in Dragon Ball.
Yes.
Wait, what?
There's a cameo.
In the first saga of Dragon Ball, when Goku gets Nimbus,
okay,
the first time, Roshi is trying to show him how to ride it, and because you have to have a pure heart
Right.
to ride Nimbus,
Right.
and Roshi most definitely does not anymore. He can't get on the cloud, so he calls Mini Gamera to come help him so they can all fly to Fry Pan Mountain
Okay.
to save Chi-Chi's dad. And get a Dragon Ball stuck in a castle. But anyway.
So my general experience with Gamera is listening to him talk about his growing love of kaiju and talking about Gamera, and just like, who's Gamera? He'll talk about Gamera. And then
he came up on the Cellcast last year.
He when?
Frankenweenie.
Oh, that's right. He did.
Because the giant
that's right.
giant monster turtle is a send up to Gamera.
That's true. That is true. So yeah, my vast knowledge is very small when it comes to Gamera. So the only thing I've ever watched of Gamera is this.
Interesting. So we have someone who is starting to explore the Gamera series, someone who has only ever seen this, and the guy who knows everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got the whole spectrum covered here. But for me personally, here's the funny thing. I discovered Gamera after I discovered Godzilla. I was into Godzilla, and whenever I would go to video stores looking up stuff for Godzilla, obviously the Gamera movies are going to be right there too because alphabetical. And I would look at the VHS covers, and I would just be like, what in the heck is this? And I just didn't have any interest. And then I heard about Guardian of the Universe and how apparently it was actually good. And eventually I tracked down and watched it, really liked it. And then I heard the 2 sequels were even better, but couldn't get my hands on those until much later. So, and then after that, my interest in Gamera just really wasn't there because it wasn't as readily available. And then largely because of this, and then I got the Heisei trilogy, completed that finally, but I didn't really do much with the Showa movies until actually more recently when the board mandated that I cover them.
Those were a fun couple episodes for us listeners.
That was
Not
an
so much for
entire
you.
year, sir. All of season 2, Year of Gamera. That was fun. By fun, I mean not fun. Sure, you've got important connections. We get it. You helped Gamera save the world from a space squid. At 10 years old, well, you got to whatever. Your convoluted backstory, we get it.
As a fellow ex-Boy Scout, Jimmy, I understand your pain. I mean, I don't know if you got a merit badge for that or not, but
well. Anyway,
you ought to have.
Anyway, so I eventually got to all of the movies. I definitely prefer the Heisei films and The Brave. I do think The Brave is grossly underappreciated. Grossly. I absolutely love the Gamera The Brave.
I will say I have been enjoying what I've watched of the Showa era stuff, but I am approaching this as I'm just watching goofy, cheesy sci-fi films. I'm not expecting anything serious out of any of these until I get to the Heisei stuff.
Well, I'm going to prepare you right now when you get to Gamera Super Monster.
I know there's suffering in my future.
It is. That might be top 5 worst movies I've ever covered on the podcast, and it also might be at least in the top 10 worst kaiju movies ever made.
It can't be as bad as All Monsters Attack.
Oh, it's infinitely worse because All Monsters Attack is actually good.
I disagree.
Do not besmirch All Monsters Attack on this show.
Disagree.
How dare you? How dare you? But no, it is so much worse. And the fact that Gamera went from absolute bottom of the barrel to peak kaiju cinema in 15 years it just astonishes me. It just absolutely astonishes me.
When you get a decent director behind the property,
yeah,
it's amazing
Shusuke Kaneko, yeah. And speaking of directors and such, let's talk a little bit about the background on this show. So this was actually something a little bit new for me, and I was a little confused by it because the first thing that I discovered that just threw me off was we were told this was going to be 6 episodes. I thought it was going to be the standard, 25 to 30 minute episodes, pretty standard for anime. No, they're full length. They're about 45 to 50 minutes a piece. If they were airing on television, they would be a full hour. I have never seen an anime series that did that before, unless it was an OVA. OVA stands for original video animation, but apparently this is considered an ONA, an original net animation.
Which basically took over the OVA market since the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Most ONAs though are only 10 to 15 minutes long though in general.
Yeah.
So most of your short form stuff nowadays are technically ONAs.
Yeah. So that threw me off. So even though we were told, it's 6 episodes, it feels more like 12.
It does.
It should have been 12.
Yeah, but that would have messed with the
released them in half hours. It would have been 12.
Yeah, but that would have messed with their marketing.
I don't care.
Would have messed with their marketing because they were touting this as Gamera versus 5 monsters, which we'll get into that because that's true and yet not at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was released on Netflix September 7th, 2023. So very recent. And it was produced by Kadokawa Corporation, which, if you remember from some of the previous Gamera episodes on MIFV, Kadokawa is basically bought the Daiei's library, so now they own all of that. They were actually a publishing company, and it was animated by ENGI. I had to look them up. I had never heard of them, and guess what? I haven't heard of anything else that they've made besides this. They've been around for about 4 or 5 years. And I don't know what any of the other stuff they made is. I don't even know what they would be best known for, to be honest.
Sorry, I'm looking it up really quick.
Yeah. So it says they were founded by.
Sorry, I do recognize one of these names, but it was not a show I watched.
Okay, which one is that?
Trapped in a Dating Sim.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I at least have heard of that, but I know nothing about it.
Yeah. So I don't know what
I'm tired of isekai.
Yeah. And I don't know what really any of the rest of this stuff is. And, although hilariously, it says that the studio was founded by Kadokawa, Sammy Corporation, and Ultra Super Pictures. Good Lord.
Sammy Corporation involved explains why they used all those Sega logos in the first episode.
I just think Ultra Super Pictures just sounds goofily redundant to me.
Would you prefer Super Ultra?
It's not any better. It's right up there with Super Duper Megaforce,
Well, I mean, that explains exactly how I feel about Super Duper Megaforce.
because you had Super Megaforce. Yeah, that was redundant.
Super Megaforce was bad enough.
Yeah.
So I just called it Super Duper because I hate it.
Yeah, exactly. So this was directed and co-written by Hiroyuki Seshita of the Godzilla anime trilogy, among other things.
Which I still need to watch.
There were people, including my friend, the Omni Viewer, who had doubts that he could make anything good because of the anime trilogy. But he said in interviews, you have to understand, Toho tied my hands. Kadokawa didn't, so I'm basically getting to do what I want.
Well, the fights are good, but we'll get there.
Okay, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So
I'm sorry, I do have opinions.
Yeah, we do.
I can tell. So this was announced November 16th, 2022 by Kadokawa. And a little quotation here. I'm going to put this on full screen mode. Can I get this to full screen mode? How do I get this into full screen mode? I can StreamYard, guys, I swear. There we go. So, a little quotation here from Wikipedia. Quote, Shusuke Kaneko, director of the Heisei Gamera trilogy, had proposed an idea for a new film. However, Kaneko had already proceeded with their new project by the time Kaneko presented his pitch. Regardless, Kaneko expressed his support for the project. So that actually upset some people because they thought that we got shafted out of basically a Gamera 4 from.
But
Kaneko.
Why would them doing this 6-episode anime keep you from making another movie?
I think they want to make this because it's a lower risk investment to see if there's still interest in a Gamera project.
Okay, now that is fair.
That's the prevailing theory. And so honestly, I was rooting for this show to be successful just to get more Gamera.
I'm still hoping he shows up in MonsterVerse at some point.
I mean, that's one possibility I've heard people talk about. But a new Kaneko movie would be pretty exciting, too. I'd be curious to see if it would be a continuation of the trilogy or if he would just do something completely new. And what he would I would love to know what his pitch was, to be honest. I would love to hear that pitch. And let me tell you, Gamera is itching for some new projects. The anime was fun, but he's itching for new projects right now on the island. So
I'm sure he is.
Well, I mean, he was King of the Monsters for, during the year of Gamera because the board said so. Yeah, that went over well.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that went over well. So we are once again going to be borrowing the format that I got from our mutual friend Ben Avery of Strangers and Aliens. And he's doing a new podcast right now about what he said was the worst sci-fi show ever. Something called The Star Lost, and Welcome to Level 7. We got a bunch of shows. So we're going to be talking about plot, character, theme, and style. So we'll be going over those 4 quadrants. So I thought we would start here with plot. So just to share a little bit more information with people, we did have some other writers besides Mr. Seshita working on this. We also had... these are not as big as I would like them to be. I'll make this full full screen. So Kenta Ihara, Hiroshi Seko, Tetsuya Yamada, and I would say that for this section, we'll be talking about story, writing, dialogue, and pacing. So obviously this is a 6-episode show, but it's double length, so we're basically getting 12. Right. So, And the way this was marketed was they said it was going to be Gamera versus 5 monsters. So people were thinking, okay, so the first episode will be solo, and then he'll fight a new monster in every episode until the end. Not exactly how things panned out.
No,
not exactly. Basically, it was the first 5 episodes. Fight a different kaiju, and then in episode 6, we get a powered-up Gyaos. So the show was bookended with Gyaos, which just makes sense because Gyaos is basically Gamera's arch nemesis at this point.
Or as close as he can get.
As close as he can get. He showed up in every era. He was in Showa, he was in Heisei, he was in the Brave at the beginning, so for about 5 minutes, and now he's here. So, I mean, compared to Ghidorah, not quite as exciting, but still.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, we're basically looking at this universe's version of Rodan, but
yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah. But, so and the one thing that I noticed after I think about 2 episodes or so, I realized that the structure of this show is not unlike another popular tokusatsu franchise, Ultraman.
I can see that.
Because it follows basically the same sort of formula. human characters investigate monster. Monster does horrible things. Monster then goes on full-blown rampage. Hero shows up at the end to help everybody after the humans fail to solve the problem.
The only difference is Gamera is not a human-sized turtle when he's not a giant.
Nope.
So,
yeah. So there are differences, but it's still basically the same structure. And I think it works here. It's different than what people would be used to in the Gamera movies. The movies are set up differently, where typically even the newer ones fall into this formula, where it's more like Gamera will try to fight the monster early on in the movie. He will lose, and then he will come back in a second round and defeat the monster based on what he learned losing the first round.
yeah.
We don't really get that here.
There was one that was kind of like that. I think the one versus Virus was like that to some degree, but for the most part, yeah, you're right.
Right. So, what are your thoughts on these aspects of this miniseries?
Okay. Looking at the plot, I mean, the general overall story is it's fine. I liked the idea of it being a conspiracy, though admittedly it took a while to get to that point. That
felt a little out of left field.
Well, the first two episodes didn't even feel like it was anything but like a standard monster thing, standard monster fight kind of show. And then you get to episode 3 and they're getting on the boat and you're starting to learn more about the two adults with the kids. And I'm going, okay, this is kind of interesting. But the longer it was, like, I could see elements of, okay, there's some kind of mystery, some kind of behind the books dealings that they're not showing us, but they're kind of alluding to it. And it's all going to come out probably. I assumed, and I correctly assumed, it was going to come out in episode 5, what was going on. Because that's just how the climax, that's just how the structure felt like it was going. I could tell that's where the boss fight was going to happen. The big boss fight, which I'm just going to say, yeah, Virus was the big boss fight as far as I'm concerned. We do have Super Gauss at the end. Yes. But, and as cool and interesting as that was, that really did felt like, oh, we have another episode we have to make. So we can wrap all this stuff. Who's Gamera going to fight now? Wasn't there a 6 monster? No, there wasn't. They're going to have him fight Gauss again.
Again, like I said, they're going to bookend it with his arch nemesis. I'm a little surprised.
That makes sense. But I kept thinking, admittedly, I wasn't sure when I was watching it which one they were going to do until the monster showed up. So I kept thinking when they went to episode 3, I thought, oh, this will be the one where Virus shows up because he's a giant squid. And when he didn't show up in that one, and it was it Barugan? Zigra. I'm sorry.
Barugan is the one who got left out. The one Showa monster who got left out, because these are all Showa monsters. Right. He's the one who got left out, and I'm a little surprised, to be honest.
But the plot line wise, it made sense to me anyway, how it went. There were a couple elements that threw me, such as how quickly the American bully turned around after one episode.
And good Lord, he was despicable in that first episode.
Yes. And then episode 2, while there was some interesting story there, it just felt like a bridge until they could get to the ship in episode 3. It felt like it was just an excuse. Not that. And I'm just talking about the non-monster fight stuff there. Once we get to the monster fights, it's like I really feel this plot is an excuse to line up 6 monster fights. Yeah. And to some degree, that's all I needed. But unfortunately, that does lead to some cheapness in the non-monster fight sections, which we'll talk about later.
Agreed.
Right. Well, and I've got some opinions on that. I had a discussion with one of my podcast friends about that, and I'm going to be honest with you. This is, weirdly enough, very much in the Gamera tradition. Gamera was made by a lesser studio in Japan, because Dai was not as prestigious as Toho was. And he never had as much money thrown at his movies as Godzilla did. So the fact that we fast forward and now Gamera has an anime after Godzilla has gotten 2 now, really, because you had the anime, the trilogy of movies, and then Singular Point, and both of those made by very well-known, very pedigree animation studios with a lot of money, and then you get this, and it's I had never heard of the studio and never heard of any other stuff. So, like I said, it's the Gamera tradition. do as best you can with less than Godzilla.
That is fair, but I have some things I wish they would have done different, but we will get there when we get there.
We will get there. Do I have to hit a Rant Master for this?
No.
No.
It's actually not that bad. It's just I did a little bit of extra research trying to figure out some of where my dislike of the animation style came from. But we'll get there.
We'll get there. But Jacob, you got any thoughts on the plot?
Story wise, be like, it's like Drew said, be like, there's a lot of more, like the first 3 to 4 episodes feel more just like it's just Gamera versus another kaiju. Be like, Gamera seems to lose, but then gets the upper hand again and wins. And we get this unveiling of be like, oh, these are the special kids. These are the chosen kids. Or as I like to call them, the snacks.
The snacks? See, there's
eat them.
The kaiju fandom already has a nickname for kid characters in these things. We call them Kennies.
Kennies. Okay.
We call them Kennies. It's an MST3 kid.
For one of the English dubs for the
it was for the original movie.
Film, they named the dub company named the kid that was in that one Kenny for some reason.
Oh.
And then when that got released on Mystery Science Theater 3000, it just became the name for all the kids that kept showing up in here, and that's kind of traversed out into the rest of the fandom. And now any child who helps their favorite giant monster is called a Kenny now.
Okay, so just clarification. So
or superhero.
So the 3-headed dragon in, I think it's like in Godzilla King of All Monsters.
You're talking about King Ghidorah.
King Ghidorah. Be like, that 3rd head is called Kenny, right?
No.
That's
Kevin.
Kevin. Okay.
That's Kevin. That's entirely different.
That is a completely different thing. That was because of a tweet from the director who was making a joke, and then the fandom latched onto it.
Fair.
Which
no,
really Kenny. When you realize that's Kevin's head in Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. So it's Mecha
and
Kevin.
He's not acting like Kevin anymore.
Kevin is angry.
Well, you would be too if you got your head chopped off.
True. Yeah, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that movie. I'm getting the evil eye from Jimmy. I think he's trying to tell me to stay on target. Anyway, so
he's going to be thinking that a lot with this group.
Yeah, I think he is.
I think his targeting here might be a little off.
Yeah, maybe a little. But yeah, so the structure is pretty simple. The structure is basically what I think you would want for something like this. Now, I know we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but this is still technically part of the plot. We have a very strange ending in this. Well, yes. I shouldn't say that. The ending is surprising. The problem I have is that once you get to about episode 5 and it starts throwing plot twists at you, it gets a little wacky because suddenly one of the adults is evil. And that heel turn felt
get eaten.
What? Yeah, and then she gets eaten.
So happy to see her get eaten.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. I was as well, but I was still thrown off because I'm like, wait a minute, that heel turn is kind of sudden.
Yeah, because she was kind of like the most. She was a very standard Nurse Joy-esque characters before that point. So.
Yeah, and then suddenly episode 5, she's like, oh, guess what? I'm evil, and I am part of a Freemason-style cult group that is attempting to bring about Armageddon. Like this, it's straight up conspiracy theorist stuff.
Yeah,
I have a friend who's a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, I've heard all this stuff from him. Like this is exactly because the bad guys end up being, and they're on the moon, which is great.
Yes.
Yeah, they're on the moon.
They're on the moon, and their goal is to
Always the
use the
moon.
monsters, particularly Virus, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah. Virus.
Save it for after the show, all right? And
Beerus was the villain in Dragon Ball's Battle of Gods.
That is true.
that's
Just like
Beerus.
Still.
Yeah. Anyway, so it turns out that they want to use the monsters to wipe out all of humanity so they can basically hit a massive reset button on the planet.
Are you so? What you're saying is, and without saying it, is they're trying to take over the world. Of course.
Of course. Well, it's not even take over the world. That's like
It'd
blow
be
it
very
up.
easy once there's no one there.
Yeah, it was like, what's the point of ruling when there's nobody there? But so that's their whole plan. That's their whole plan. It's not convoluted so much as it's just crazy because there's not really been anything quite like that in Gamera before.
Well, and the thing is they don't really explain why they want this to happen.
Exactly.
It's like, is this a religious thing that they're the descendants of? Why are you wanting these monsters to destroy everything? And why is Gamera your enemy because of that?
Yeah.
Why is Gamera the only good one?
Exactly.
Well, it's in the same.
I mean, except for the twist that went nowhere at the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. See, here's the thing. The last 2 episodes get nuts because not only do we have the plot twist about, I can't remember the characters' name. We'll get to them in a bit. So we had the revelation that she's actually evil, and then we find out that Gamera, much like it, because this is the thing. This show, in a lot of ways, borrows a lot from I would say the 3 main series, the 3 main eras of Gamera, and kind of blends them all together. In a lot of ways, it uses mostly Showa monsters, but the tone and I would say the aesthetics are closer to Heisei, and then hence why. And then no, I would say that the aesthetics are closer to Heisei. The tone is more like the Brave, but it's more like, but the story itself is a bit more like a Showa story where the kids get dragged into all these crazy things that they would normally never get involved in. In fact, there is one episode where like you're getting dangerously close to what people complain about with the Showa series, with the kids being smarter than the adults. Now, there was an instance where it made sense that the adults are consulting them because the kids saw things that they didn't.
Yes.
So like, fine, I'll go with that.
Well, and one of them had a special magical connection to Gamera.
Right.
So
Right.
Special.
Right. And then this is why I have this picture on here. Shout out to Kaiju Kim, who just lost her little mind when she saw this. But by the end of it, this is part of the weird ending. We have baby Gamera, who looks like Toto from The Brave.
He was so cute, though.
He is. This was a post-credit thing.
The cynical part of me, though, looks at baby Gamera here and wonders, did you do this because of Baby Yoda?
No, they did it because Toto from The Brave.
Because baby characters are the cute in thing to do right now.
Yes, but Drew, they did it because of this thing back here in the bottom right corner.
Either way.
Like, you put those next to each other, they're almost the same character.
You can't do, you could do both.
Yeah.
You can use one as an excuse for the other.
I understand that. Although I will admit, I have not seen a baby Gamera Rebirth merchandise yet. Perhaps
Give
that
it
is
time.
still
It'll
coming.
be up there.
Yeah.
Baby
Bandai will
Yoda
get its
sold well,
money.
Baby Groot sold well.
Yeah.
Baby Gamera could sell well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Bandai is listening to this to this live stream / podcast right now, and they're like, how did we not think of this?
Inconceivable.
Yeah, just sell baby Gamera dolls. Little plushes.
So we have
hotcakes.
Right. So anyway, so we have all of this, and then we also find out that because the kids get a vision, and we get basically the origin of Gamera. It's this big exposition dump, and it's like, hey, say he was created by an ancient civilization. The implication seems to be Atlantis, maybe. It was Atlantis in the Heisei movies.
Who knows?
Not Atlantis.
Yeah, probably not, but it was an ancient civilization.
No. I'm thinking forward to the next next episodes. You're probably going to be on our show.
Oh, lordy!
I don't want that crossover.
Oh, lordy!
Between Gamera and
Aquaman and Titanic.
Dog with gun.
Hey, right up my alley.
Anyway,
for the Titanic.
Oh gosh.
Anyway. So then we get all of that. So we find out Gamera was made to stop the other monsters, or at the very least, he's trying to stop the other. Or basically, he's the one good kaiju who wants to stop the other monsters, who were made by the crazy cult who was originally part of the civilization. So like I said, it's a bunch of stuff to take in. It's just this dump. Yeah. And then we get to episode 6. Everything goes bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gamera defeats all of the kaiju, turns evil for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Pulls a Shin Godzilla, kills the bad guys on the frickin' moon.
With the most accurate shot I have ever seen.
Exactly. Does he have targeting on his system?
I'm just saying. I've seen some kaiju do some crazy things. I don't know if anything quite tops what Gamera did in this. This might.
If it had been a large blast that took off a large hunk of the moon, that would be more understandable than, I am Gamera. I'm going to take this sniper shot and only take out the conference room where the bad guys are on the moon from was that thousands of miles away?
Thousands of miles away, and it happens very quickly. Also, if I remember correctly, it went straight through the moon.
It did go straight through the moon.
The moon has an exit wound right now.
Yes, but
yes, Jimmy, I know you're going to go fix it.
He's not Bash Stampede. He takes a chunk out of the moon. I think that would have made more sense.
Just saying.
That was
had to do.
Yeah, that was insane. So then Gamera dies, which I kind of thought he was going to die anyway. But the other big crazy thing that happened, I'm trying to remember, was it episode 4 or was it episode 5? I want to say it was 4, because one of the kids dies, which I was not expecting.
That's at the end of 5.
Is that at the end of 5? Yeah, I was not expecting that to happen. I will admit that. We'll get to that more.
That was a nice twist.
Yes.
Yeah, we will get to that more in the character section, but I was not expecting one of the kids to die. But the reason I bring it up now is because we wrap everything up nicely. The credits start playing. And then we get a mid-credit scene, which that's why I stay. And I'm like, they always do this now. Marvel has ruined me, and everybody else for that matter.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. And so then we see Baby Gamera, which I think goes. This is why I think the title has a double meaning, but one of the meanings is metatextual. So it's Gamera Rebirth because he's reborn at the end. But it's also Rebirth because this is the first time we've seen Gamera on screen in about, I'm trying to do the math in my head, since 2005? No, 6, since 2006. So we're 17 years.
Yeah.
17 years. But then the 1980s, the 1980s cell phones. It starts going off when we hear the kid who's supposed to be dead trying to call his friends.
Yes.
And then it just ends. And I'm like, you're sequel baiting? You're seriously sequel baiting for this?
Everybody sequel baits.
That is true.
Unfortunately, as much as I'm curious if Joe actually did survive, I'm still like, where could you go from here?
True.
Right. Actually,
the villain of the next one?
Yeah, which... I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, there's possibilities, but I mean, we can talk about that once we finish the main discussion. I should mention the official synopsis for this, since we're talking about the plot, is during summer 1989, 3 elementary students witness Gamera in battle as monsters converge on Tokyo. That is a very stupid official synopsis, I would like to say. That is very nondescript because we've already unpacked a lot more of what's going on.
That's pretty much, here's what you expect from a Gamera movie, and we're setting it in 1989.
Yeah.
Which, when we get to the style section, I have opinions about that. I have opinions about that. Any more to say about the plot of this?
I mean, it was a serviceable plot. It had a couple interesting things going on in there. But there was also a lot of padding to get it out to 40 minutes.
Yeah,
episode.
Really? Yeah. What did you feel that was the padding?
The tank crew for most of the show.
Okay, but
because every time until the last episode, every time they're on screen, it's like, okay, here's the news that everyone knows, but we're going to give you just a quick recap. It's like, if you'd have put that at if this had been 12 episodes, that would have been a good excuse to as to the last time on Gamera Rebirth, that you could have used as the callback for that. But because they're all hour-long episodes, and it's not really telling you anything that didn't occur in the last half hour, it's like, why are we dealing with the tank crew again? Because they're not doing anything. This one guy, I'm convinced, sleeps in his tank.
I think it's
the entire time.
I think it's meant to. I think it's just there for comedy and maybe as kind of like a Shin Godzilla style little commentary, because they keep saying it's like, we don't get to do anything.
Maybe, but it's still
tell what's going on.
Just still felt like we're seeing these guys again, and I know this scene is going to go nowhere.
Yeah,
the joke is dead after one episode. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was amazed they kept coming back. I will say that.
Yeah, especially since every scene, and now this is kind of getting into style. It's like you see the person at the same angle.
Exactly
the same angle. It's like you just copy and paste it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we'll get
there.
We'll get to style in a moment. Let's talk about our characters here. So while we're talking about the characters, I'm also going to rattle off our cast here. Now, out of curiosity, did you guys watch this sub or dub? That is the eternal anime question. Dubbed. I watched it dubbed as well, although I did listen to a little bit of the original Japanese for reasons, and we'll get to that. So, quick rundown here. So we have Boko, our main character. Voiced in Japanese by Hisako Kanemoto. It's a woman. And Ryan Bartley in English. Junichi, voiced by Aki Toyosaki and Abby Trott in English. You'll notice that is a girl's name. We'll get there.
Yes.
Joe. Yeah, Joe Yoshitsugu, voiced in Japanese by Yoshitsugo Matsuoka. Yeah, and by Robbie Damon in English. Then Brody, the token American, voiced in Japanese by Subaru Kimura, and Sean Chiplock in English. That name sounds familiar. Why do I recognize that name?
He didn't sound familiar, so
it's just the name looks familiar. And then General Raymond Osborne, who's Brody's dad, voiced by Kazuya Nakai in Japanese and Patrick Seitz. Yeah, Seitz in English. And then James Tazaki, who is our government man in this, our mandatory government man, voiced in Japanese by Mamoru Miyano and by Kaji Tang in English. So I'm guessing that's actually a Japanese-American actor. Nice job there. And then Emiko Melchiori, our secret villain.
Yeah.
Our heel turn villain.
Yeah.
Just comes out of nowhere.
Voiced by Saori Hayami in Japanese and Susie Young in in English that also sounds Asian. So nice job there, guys. And then Nora Melchiori, who I believe that was that was her mother, I think. Yeah, because Melchiori. So she's one of the council members. Voiced by Marie Oe and in Japanese, and Karen Strassman in English. And then finally, Winston Griffith, voiced by Wataru Hatano in Japanese, and Todd Haberkorn in English. That name sounds familiar too. But this is, I'm doing the info and stuff for you guys right here.
Right. Todd Haberkorn, he's in like a lot of stuff that what used to be Funimation, now Crunchyroll does. Mm-hmm. He's a big voice actor in that corral.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen him in a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, don't you mean heard him?
Yes, I've heard him in a lot of things.
Yeah. So anyway,
he's almost as ubiquitous in anime as Johnny Young Bosch is.
Yeah, just about. So anyway, like I said, our main cast here are actually kids, although I have a little bit of trouble believing Brody is 12. He's the most well-developed 12-year-old I've ever seen because he's way taller than the rest of the kids. Maybe it's because he's American, so the idea is that he's supposed to be bigger and taller than these Japanese kids.
I mean, I was kind of looking at the character sizes as being exaggerated to just give more weight between them, because I mean, the Japanese kids are for the most part all going to be around the same height
roughly
normally, and then the Americans would be bigger. So that's kind of just how I looked at it. It's the same way I look at Technicolor hair in anime all the time. It's not really that color,
right? Right. Although here they do have realistic hair colors, because Brody is blonde. He's the one blonde kid.
Joe has dark blue hair.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is because he's Japanese, so he would have darker hair.
Yeah, true.
But
I'll let it go.
But anyway, so much like traditional Gamera, it centers around kids. Now, I will unpack this a little bit more in the style section, but I will say what this does do, what I've been saying for a while that a Gamera project should do, which is go the Stranger Things route. Because this group of these kids feel like they would get along with the kids from Stranger Things very well.
Yeah,
I can see that.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, like I said,
I kind of wish we had an 11 for the group, but Boko, I guess, is technically filling that role. But
yeah, he's kind of there because he's supposed to be the special kid. Because that's the weird thing. Yeah. And they don't fully explain that, which is a little annoying. No. They just say he's the special kid because if they feed him to one of the kaiju, in particular virus, whichever pronunciation you prefer, it will somehow make him crazy powerful and he'll be able to bring about the end of the world, of course. But they don't explain why. We don't know if it's because he's a direct descendant of the ancient civilization, if it's something special in his genetic code. We just know he's a special kid. He's the MacGuffin.
Obviously, that's something you save for season 2.
It's season 2. Okay.
I'm not saying there's going to be one. It's just you can tell this was written and ideas like, oh, this is we're going to start some mysteries and we'll explain them as later on in the series.
Yeah.
Right. Now, and each of these kids. Now, here's the thing, though. These are not
strings.
I would say that even though they have moments where they feel a bit like Showa era Kennys, I know you and Masao are still the best ones. I get it. You're like the two that I like, unironically. I got it.
The only two that gotten anything done so far.
Yeah, basically. That's why they actually do things. But anyway, these kids are more like the kids in The Brave, where they are more proactive and they are far less annoying. But they all have their own hangups. They all have some very major hangups. Brody obviously starts off as a bully and a flaming racist.
Oh,
just a bit.
It was like he was so racist. I'm like, oh, please don't be an anti-American commentary. Please don't be an anti-American commentary.
Especially in that first episode. It's like,
dear Lord.
I know we gaijin are not really well liked in Japan, but
It depends on who you talk to.
Don't make us all evil.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I work on a Japanese island, technically, because Ogasawara is still controlled by Japan. But yeah, so I was a little worried about that at first. And also, it's interesting because the show starts with an American military base, which is a bit of a sticking point for some people in Japan. So I thought that was interesting. So they went to some interesting places with this. So it wasn't just focused on the Japanese government. It's actually bringing in some American influence in there. So, but it's a natural source of conflict, I would say. Boko's, I'm trying to figure out what Boko's issues are primarily, because he spends most of his time just trying to keep the group together, and then he finds out he's special, and he has to deal with that. He's definitely the most well-adjusted, I would say, out of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in some cases, yeah.
In some cases.
But he's also very insecure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's a very insecure kid. He is afraid
insecure.
He's afraid to ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
He's afraid to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
He's afraid to be he's afraid to change.
It's because he's at that age where he has to start transitioning from being a kid to being a grown-up, basically. He has to start learning grown-up things. And I think what makes it difficult for him, because we never see his dad, and the implication seems to be that he has a single mom.
Yeah.
Because we only see his mother. Mm-hmm. So perhaps that is part of it.
It took me a while to realize that's who that was supposed to be. Because
I know, because the character
was older sister.
Yeah, the design for her is just bizarre.
It is.
Very bizarre. She looked almost masculine at points.
I was guessing they were trying to go for like a late 80s feminism fashion thing.
Probably.
But I don't know. It was just really weird.
I will say she definitely.
It took a while for me to like her character.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand that. I mean, she was never really all that despicable. She clearly doesn't really understand Boko, and later on, she really earned some character points because she's going to bat for her son really hard, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he's insecure, he's scared, and that's why he has Joe around. Joe is his best friend. And he is definitely the braver of the two, and he's always trying to push Boko. The main problem that Joe has is this kid's rough around the edges. He's the punk of the group.
Yeah.
And it's because, from what we can tell, his mother is not around. It's kind of the opposite of Boko, and his dad is a deadbeat.
Yeah.
So he's basically had to assume a bunch of responsibility too early.
Yeah.
So
he grew up really fast.
He grew up really fast, so he's very rough around the edges, and I will get into this in the style section. Good Lord, is he cussy. This is the cussiest Gamera anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Good grief.
And plus, like Boko, he does have his insecurities. He doesn't like being bucked up against.
Mm-hmm.
If someone kind of threatens his authority, he kind of folds in and walks off. He's all bluster and show.
His punk outer shell is trying to cover.
Yeah,
I think still a very insecure little boy on the inside.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm thinking of the Jet Jaguar MST3K song. His phone cover up basic insecurity. Anyway. Yeah. And actually, I was thinking about this because we have a foursome here. And what's interesting is that when you see a group of four in a story, they all fall into certain archetypes. You see it with Ghostbusters. You see it with Ninja Turtles. You'll have the leader, the comic relief, the muscle/hothead, and the smart one, the genius, the brains. And I was trying to figure out where that applied here with this. And I will admit, some of these kids are a little difficult to classify. Like, I don't know which one of these I would classify specifically as the group leader. Maybe Boko. And as for, like, the muscle, here, yeah, that could go to Joe or it could go to Brody. The brains is definitely Junichi.
Yes. Agreed. Junichi is definitely the brains.
But I also don't know. So I don't know who exactly would be the muscle, and I don't know who would be the comic relief.
It is odd, though, for there to be 4 main kids, considering that 4 generally in Japan is the word 4 has a superstition in Japan, like because it sounds like the word death.
Oh.
So it is kind of odd that they did that here.
Yeah. But speaking of Junichi. Oh, wait. We're talking about Joe. So we mentioned Joe dies.
Yeah, we're still on Joe.
We should talk about this because that's a big thing. So Joe sacrifices himself to save everybody else. And it is a sacrifice that makes sense. He does seem like the one who would be the most likely to do it.
Yeah.
Out of all of them.
Well, I mean, it would have been either him or I cannot remember his name, the adult guy that was with him.
Sasaki.
Sasaki. But he was knocked out at the time and was not able to act like that. So.
Yeah. Right. And given he's kind of the protector of the group. He's protecting Boko for sure. And he's trying to look out for the rest of them. He's the one who was the most reticent about going on the crazy adventure. Because he's like, what are you guys doing? We shouldn't be doing this. He's trying to be the sensible one. But
but he was also a little seasick too.
Yeah,
the entire time.
That's true. So when you get to the situation where basically they got shot into space, I know what that's like, and they're trying to get to the escape pod, and they find out that not all of them can get in there, and then he just says, "All of you go." And this is right after we had gotten this entire episode where he's crawling through a vent, and he just gives his whole backstory.
They could have all gotten in there, but there was a problem with the launch, and the only way to force it out required one person to stay behind because the manual ejection was inside the ship, not in the ejection pod.
Yeah, and the other pod was damaged.
Which honestly, that's poor design.
It is poor design.
Agreed. It is.
Now
it gives you more like
it's your excuse.
An excuse
right.
to plot
for the sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like this before.
Yeah,
it's a trope. I've seen stuff like this before. Now, you could make the argument that he isn't dead because we see the ship fly off, but we don't see it crash or explode or anything.
Yeah.
I still think
that's intentional so they can have their after credits scene.
Yeah, it really was, but I did honestly think he was dead, and I treated it as such.
I thought the what impacted the tower where our quote unquote our main baddie was. Bill, I thought that was the shuttle coming down.
No, I don't think
it crashed into the tower. No, I could be wrong.
I thought that was Virus himself.
Well, Virus was dead at this point.
Yeah,
but he was dead. But parts of him were falling. So
true.
That could be it.
It could be. I don't know. But it was.
I'm kind of assuming we're gonna find out, much like Spock's coffin at the end of Wrath of Khan. It's gonna have soft landed somewhere, and he's stuck on a deserted island, and no one knows where Joe is.
Right.
Well, there you go.
Which then kind of just completely just guts that sacrifice.
Does it?
In a way,
I don't know. It doesn't really, in my opinion.
Okay.
Granted, it would mean more if the character died, but we didn't actually see the character die.
That is true. We actually didn't see him.
They just make you assume that that's what happened for what is, but we don't ever actually get to see anything.
And the thing is, the show telegraphed that this was going to happen very indirectly in the very first scene, because the first scene of the show is Boko laying on the beach narrating, monologuing about stuff that clearly has already happened. So we're coming in much later in the story. And then the rest of the show is showing, and then the next 5 episodes is basically showing us how he got there.
Yeah.
And so we eventually get to that scene, and now we understand the context for it.
Though they did add some lines when we got there the second time that weren't in the first time.
Right.
So
Right. So, like I said, it makes sense, and it was a very dramatic moment. This is honestly the most unexpected thing, I think, in the entire show.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one that actually made sense. Yeah, what's her name? The Emiko, her heel turn, kind of out of nowhere.
It did.
Kind of out of nowhere. So it's unexpected in that regard. This was unexpected because I've never seen a kid die in anything Gamera before.
Yeah.
Never.
that was strange.
Yeah.
It was a pleasant, but at the same time, like gut-wrenching moment. It was like, oh my gosh, he makes the play that no one else will. Like he pulls a Spock. And I was like, wow, that's brave. That's bold to do that.
Actually,
definitely when you have a child character.
Now that I think about it, that whole scene where Boko and him are talking, it is very Kirk and Spock, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It is. You put the parallels together, it is.
Wow. Now, obviously, it was in the moment when it was actually happening, so it's way more dramatic. Well, not dramatic, it's more intense. But yeah, wow. My mind's a little blown by that. But now, let's talk about Junichi. This threw me off so bad because Junichi ends up being the token girl.
Yeah.
But for the first 2.5 episodes, I was convinced Junichi was a boy.
Yeah.
Well, there was nothing really telling you he wasn't, or she wasn't a boy.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is just because it's that type of kid who's naturally androgynous and obviously hasn't started going through puberty in any way, shape, or form yet. So it could have gone either way. And I just assumed since that the character was hanging out with two other boys, that he was a boy.
Well, ever since the three of them are elementary kids.
Yeah.
So
when they actually do give that reveal,
it was a nice reveal.
It's like, oh, that's an interesting reveal. And plus, looking back on everything, it's like, oh, that kind of fits. I can see how that works.
Yeah.
And it was at that point I realized there was a woman voicing the character, not as a woman voices little boys. It was weird. Because there's a difference.
I just kick myself for not figuring it out until it's actually revealed. I think by episode 3, because episode 3 is when they finally tell you. I think I was like, wait a minute.
It's at the end of episode 3.
It is.
Yeah. I think during episode 3, I was kind of like, wait a minute. Are you guys trying to say something here? And then you find out at the end that I'm like, oh, good Lord.
I mean, the fact that they're not wearing school uniforms is the only reason we don't know, but until episode 3.
It's during the summer.
Because otherwise he would have been walking around in a sailor suit.
Well, because there are different school uniforms.
That is true.
There are different kinds of school uniforms, but yeah.
And in some
none of them dress you up as weirdly colored Marty McFly.
That's true.
Yeah. Junichi is beyond tomboyish. Like it is. She is freakishly tomboyish because I was fooled, and I don't normally get fooled like that.
Well, and you don't normally see female characters being the conspiracy nut.
Or the nerd.
Or the nerd.
Or the hyper
nerd. They did an excellent job of hiding the fact till it made sense to bring it up. Because then you feel like Brody when he's going, Junichi's a girl? Yeah. I had no idea.
And then suddenly he's crushing on her.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes nowhere.
Of course it goes nowhere. This happened in episode 3.
Yeah, I know.
Also, it's an anime. Romances tend not to go anywhere.
Okay.
At least in my experience, they drag it out so much because they want to keep that tension constantly.
Yeah, they love the idea of everyone being a part of their own harem. But anyway,
yeah. Other than that, once I kind of process that, I learned to accept it pretty quickly, and I went with it. After that, it doesn't really affect all that much. You know, so Junichi's
character doesn't
able
change,
to
so-
just be a character.
Yeah, I think at that point you just start to notice, and it's like that's like okay, now you can notice the character is a girl.
You notice
they hid that very well.
You notice certain feminine mannerisms.
Yes.
I wonder if it would have been more obvious, granted, since I have not watched didn't watch the Japanese version, if someone may have used an honorific that would have given it away early.
Maybe.
But obviously none of her friends would have, and Brody would have no way of knowing.
Right. I don't know. I think I tried to check a little bit. I know I was checking. So like, who voiced this character? Because I will admit, for a hot second, and I do wonder. I wouldn't be surprised if I dug around on the internet enough that there would probably be people who would try to argue, and I know I'm veering into potentially dangerous waters here, who would try to argue that Junichi is trans. But I don't get that impression here. I just think Junichi is just extremely tomboyish and hasn't hit puberty yet.
Probably too young to even think about such things.
Yeah.
And plus, like we find like some girls are a little more tomboyish. They want to just hang out with boys.
Yeah, especially at that age.
Yeah, especially at that age.
Right. All right. So like I said, I didn't think much of it. We do have Brody's dad. He factors into things but he's in the long run. And the same thing could be said for Boko's mother. They're the parents. They're the token parents.
Yeah, but Brody's dad factors in more as the head of the American forces than he does as
United.
as
Yeah,
Brody's dad.
it's an Air Force base at Fusa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he factors in more in that aspect of being the leader of the Air Force base than he does as Brody's dad. So,
and he's the one who's.
It takes Boko's mom to pretty much wring him out for him to finally act like a father in that position and go and save his son.
And he's also one of the examples of, we get this Showa moment where the adults defer to the kids, but I'm thinking of from episode 2, but it makes sense because it's his own son, and his son is relaying things he's seeing firsthand and just trying to tell his dad who, because kid knows a bit about how the military works. So he's like, hey, Dad, you need to do something. And he has to talk Dad into doing it. So, I wasn't bothered by that because it made sense in context.
Unlike in episode 6, where the scientists agree to build a cage because Boko says, I think that's what it said in my vision.
In their defense, they had limited time and not a lot to go on.
True, but that does feel like, listen to the kids who had the weird visions. They seem to know the most about this giant turtle.
Again, they had nothing else to go on.
Fair.
I'm just saying. Nothing else to go on. But I think the two adult characters that we need to park on are Emiko and Tazaki.
Yes.
So we need to talk about them. Tazaki is interesting because at first I thought he was going to be a little bit like, I don't remember what his real name is, but in MST3K his nickname was Corn Job. From the Gearon movie. He was this kind of Keystone Cop goofball. He's got a little bit of that going for him, but he's a government agent, but he's not quite like that, although he does get played for laughs because he does things like, oh my gosh, I hate being on a boat, and then he freaks out about that. Or a submarine. He's like, I don't like being on a submarine. He freaks out.
He was claustrophobic.
Yeah, he's claustrophobic. That gets played for laughs. And, the kids kind of push him around a little bit and things like, try to take advantage of that a little bit. And then for a minute, you think he's a bad guy after Emiko reveals that she's evil.
I wasn't sure he was because it didn't make sense for his character to do that. Not that it made much sense for Emiko, but I was like, you can't do that twice and expect me to respect you, show. If you do that, we're going to have words.
Yeah.
But I kind of could tell he was more pretending to get a better assessment of what was going on because he knew he couldn't do that and them know he was not on their side.
Yeah, he played the double agent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I honestly thought, maybe it's because I missed something.
Emiko did too, but she was playing for the other team.
Yeah, well, what I was worried is that I missed something, and when she revealed that she was actually evil, I thought they both worked for the same organization, but apparently that was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if, like I said, if I missed something or if it was a moment of bad writing. I don't know.
And granted, there is a part of me that wants to see how the Japanese version took it, because some things could have been lost in translation. But honestly, I don't think there was enough time for that much to be lost.
Right. Because it all happened very, very fast.
Yeah.
And so, he acts as kind of the liaison for the kids. He meets the kids first in episode 2, him and Emiko. So he acts as a bit of their liaison. He kind of manages them a little bit. He becomes their friend. He's the one adult that they can trust, which is nice. And he's also the one that, when there come times where he needs to enforce, a little bit of consequences on the kids and remind them that they're kids and that there are certain things they just can't do, which is nice. And he does get helpful at the end because he saves the kids from getting killed by the bad guys and all of that. The thing is that he gets weird in the ending.
Yeah, he does.
He gets really weird in the ending. Now, one of the things that they establish early on is that he has these 1980s kind of like almost like cell phones. No, I know I described them as something else, but they're like cell phones.
Communicators.
Yeah,
they were all-purpose communicators devices that they could bring up. It was the device that they just can get them out of a situation or allows them to understand a situation.
Yeah, in my notes I described them as 1980 smartphones.
Yeah, that's basically what they were. I mean, but I liked that the screen, even though it kind of looked when he was doing that, what looked like video conferencing in that one shot,
which looked like
he's not actually video conferencing. That's just 4 avatars, vague avatars of people.
Yeah, which made me snicker a little bit. It kind of reminded me of Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah,
but
I can see that.
Yeah, but I don't know exactly. See, this is what it makes the ending confusing. Because I don't know if there's a massive time jump or not. Because part of his part of the post-credit scene is he's Steve Jobs. And they replicate the conference where Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone to
He's even wearing a turtleneck.
Yeah. He's wearing a turtleneck. It's it's everything to a T replicated. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then what he does is he unveils this communicator thing to make it commercially available. I'm like, what is going on?
I was watching that, and literally because I did not know about the end credit scenes at this point, I was thinking, okay, we're doing the Where Are They Now segment, which is kind of what it is. So obviously this is, okay, at a later point, he was able to do this sometime in the 90s. And then we'll jump back to, the kids when they were in their next year of school, going into the fall or whatever. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, that might be the weirdest part of this entire show. I don't know what's going on there. I really don't understand what is going on there. It makes sense. It's almost like it was made as a joke.
It feels like it was because, I mean, he's obviously taking advantage of whatever technology they were able to scavenge at that Eustace Foundation base, and I'm assuming on the moon too, but still.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what to make of that. Now, we've already talked a bit about Emiko. I gotta say, if Emiko is supposed to be this double agent, she fooled everybody. I bought it. I bought her whole routine. I liked her. She even becomes, in episode 3, the mandatory fan service. We definitely know she's a woman.
Yeah. But I'm watching that, and we get to that point, and it's like, oh, you're the evil conspiracy princess.
Yeah.
Conspiracy
she's the head of the family.
True.
Basically.
True.
If it weren't for her aunt, she'd be the one in charge.
True.
So that kind of makes her a princess at this point.
I just love the fact that you just coined the phrase "evil conspiracy princess."
Why not?
That is one of the funniest things ever said on this podcast.
Well, what else is she gonna do? But I will say that scene where she's talking to her aunt, and obviously saying that.
It's not her mother; it's her aunt.
Gloating over her aunt's failures and going, "This is pseudophobically creepy, and if she wins, this will be much deserved." She doesn't even get past that episode. She barely lasts 2 seconds into the last episode.
So I know, but it was just so crazy. And then like her and Tazaki are flirting with each other. Tazaki asks her out. I was like, I really liked their chemistry. It's like they're we're the two sane adults here with all these crazy kids and all the madness that's going on with the kaiju and the military.
The way this was looking for a while, it's like they were the parents of this found family.
Yes.
It's like came together because of this kaiju. And then, she's the evil conspiracy princess and he's got strange connections in America that are apparently connected to Apple, as we'll later learn.
Right.
And then he killed Steve Jobs and replaced him.
I don't know. Steve Jobs just is still working at Pixar in this universe.
Apparently. Who knows what that did to Pixar. But it's just like...
They didn't get bought by Disney.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, Emika, it's just... Her sudden but inevitable betrayal blindsided me so much, I wasn't sure what to make of it. I still don't quite know what to make of it.
It threw me off when it happened, except at the same time, it was like, she is the one who knows the most about these kaiju.
But you would just assume it's because she's the scientist character. You always have to have a scientist character in these things.
Especially since her being the female scientist and the girl nerd get along so well. It's like, there's no way you're the villain, and yet she's the villain.
Yeah,
but they don't give you any hint of that until the episode where she actually does the heel turn.
Yeah,
that's why it threw me off so much.
They start giving you a little bit of hinting at the beginning of that episode when they're looking at the Gauss remains that they took with them. And it's like, because she obviously was way too much and even a scientist for this organization ought to know if they're all just finding out about these at the same time. But that's the only hint you get, especially when they start talking about that Aurelium.
Yeah.
But whatever that MacGuffin was called.
Yeah. But the problem was, I give Seshita and the writers credit. They took advantage of the fact, maybe I don't know if this was the intention or not, but people were so used to tropey scientist characters who just know everything or know a lot that you would see that and not think anything of it. And then it turns out, that was me telegraphing that I'm evil. Okay.
The only bad part about it is, admittedly, I have not gone back and watched it since because I just haven't had a reason to. But I kind of wonder, now that I know she's actually the villain, did they write anything into that kind of subtly hinted at that I would not have caught had I not known to look for it?
I suppose it's possible.
Good mystery will do that.
Yeah,
and I don't know if they've done that.
I don't know either. Thoughts, Jacob?
My thoughts definitely on this character. She is. Be like, there again, like each one of you said, be like, it's more, she's the nerd, she's the scientist that knows everything, maybe a little too much about everything, but like you said, Nate, be like, those kind of characters know these things. Be like, they're going to be the one who know about the kaiju, know about this and know about this. But her sudden, be like, it's like you break your neck with, it's like, what in the world happened?
The whiplash.
Because this character is all nice and sweet and be like, who's friends with everybody, which that could have been a cue into be like, maybe there's something behind it. But it's such a heel turn, like in the wrestling industry, where it's just like, what in the world? Be like, it's worse. And it's like they had episode. They were 5 episodes in or 4 episodes in. They had to make a fifth one. It's like, wait, what are we gonna do here? Let's throw everything at them. And then the sixth one, it's like, oh, let's just go nuts.
Yeah,
That's
plot
what
twist, exposition dump, plot twist.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It really feels like they had a longer series in mind.
That's what I thought.
In terms of the writing, and then they realize, oh, we only actually have 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
well, we
cram
need
everything
to
in
cram
there.
the rest of the plot into
Yeah,
this.
I mean, double length
They
or
probably were
not.
from even though I had to have been thinking from the beginning, we only have 5 monsters we're actually fighting.
Right.
So,
Right. Well,
And like Drew said, there was quite a few bit of filler here and there throughout this episode to make them longer.
And the thing that what makes it even starker and even more shocking is how completely different she is after it's revealed that she's the evil conspiracy princess. Like, she goes from, sweet and nice and kind of flirty, really good with the kids, to, oh yes, I'm going to kill them all.
yeah.
I mean, not quite Rita Repulsa levels, but you know what I mean.
But for still no unidentifiable reason that you're going to do all this.
Yeah, but
I think it would have been.
I
nice.
do not know her motivation other than being the princess of this conspiracy organization.
Yeah.
But like you said, she is so awful that when she gets eaten by the Gauss 3 seconds into episode 6, you don't care.
Yes.
Like,
why couldn't that have happened to Annie?
Oh gosh, thank you. Yes.
I don't know if I can advocate for Gauss eating Annie without getting in trouble.
Do it.
No, I will not turn to the dark side, even for their cookies.
Are they peanut butter?
The Cookie Monster will be very disappointed in you.
Well, we all know he's a Dark Lord of the Sith. I mean,
yeah, true.
But
he and Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, secretly. Stop triggering my producer.
You're welcome.
Gosh.
Oh, I bet he's loving Ahsoka right now.
Oh
I don't need to hit the Rat Master button for you, all right? We're talking about Gamera, not freaking Jar Jar.
We can talk Jar Jar later.
Yeah, we'll talk Jar Jar later. Or not, whatever. Anyway, okay. So I think we've talked Emiko to death at this point, and I think we've unpacked the characters pretty well. So let me get this back up here. So let's move on to the next section, theme, because I'm saving style for last because I have a feeling. I was pretty sure I was between this or characters where we would end up spending a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So, theme. What are the morals of this story, and what is it trying to say? Now, I know Seshita basically said that it was just meant to be a romp. It was supposed to be monster wrestling matches, but obviously there's a lot of time spent with the human characters and developing a story and a mythology and when you get to those last 2 episodes, it gets a wee bit convoluted, but as a lot of anime is wont to do, it's just what happens anymore. Mm-hmm. And I've talked a bit about how this reminds me a lot of Stranger Things. So, I don't know if there's a central theme. I can identify a few. We've talked a bit about some of them, Brody getting over his racism and becoming friends with these kids. Yeah, real quickly. But, he becomes friends with these kids, with these Japanese kids. And we also, obviously,
I can tell you what
friendship's
the
a big part of it, too. What?
I can tell you what the overall theme is.
What is that?
Friendship is magic.
He's not kidding.
He's not kidding.
Just without the ponies.
But yeah, I was about to say there is a big emphasis on friendship.
Yes,
and
very large emphasis.
Yeah, and in both positive and negative, because obviously with the conspiracy princess, she betrays everybody after she spent 5 episodes pretending, well, 4, because she doesn't show up for episode 2. 4 episodes pretending to be people's friend.
I have to say this because it popped into my head after I mentioned the ponies. My little Gamera.
Oh my gosh.
90 minutes in and we finally got the sad trombone.
Oh, I may have to draw that.
Oh gosh.
Gamera in the style of My Little Pony.
It can be done.
It can. It can.
There are
Please
turtles I can
send
base
it
off
to
of.
me.
Oh,
And
gosh.
please send it to me. And second question, can I merchandise it?
As long as it gets 20% of the cut.
As long as Hasbro doesn't sue.
Yes.
Hasbro or Katakala at this point?
Both.
You might get sued by both. I don't know. I mean, I just want to put it on a t-shirt.
Hey,
That's
people
it.
get away with worse. Okay.
I know, but it's just the thought that crossed my mind. Anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, so friendship, that makes sense, actually. And, when you're doing a story with kids, particularly at this age, friends become very important. I think we were all there. We all know what it's like. We got to find our tribe. We got to find our group at school or whatever. And most of these kids, other than Brody to a certain extent, but they're all outcasts in one form or another. When we find out their backstories, they were not the popular kids, and they just kind of found each other because they had weird, quirky interests. It's very 20th Century Boys to a certain extent. That was another thing that this reminded me of, and I would not be surprised if 20th Century Boys, much more likely than Stranger Things, was an influence on this.
Yeah.
Obviously, well, actually, there's more similarities now that I think about it. I've been reading that manga, so it's all fresh in my mind right now. With it also is dealing with conspiracies and kids. Well, the kids are adults now, but they do a lot of flashbacks to when they were kids and all the shenanigans that they got into. But yeah, all of that to say, yeah, it's a huge deal at that age. And I also do think, even though it's abrupt, betrayal is not an easy thing to deal with. And so, these kids, Tazaki, all of them, they didn't know who they could trust for a while. And honestly, they had to learn to trust Brody.
And they had to relearn to trust Tazaki after he pretty much acted like he was the villain for a while to him.
Right. And
also you're dealing with themes of growing up.
Yeah, growing up.
Yeah, you do have a coming of age story in this.
And I actually would like to. I think coming of age and Gamera work very well together. Given Gamera's history with being very kid oriented, it just makes sense to me. So I really like that. And you mentioned found family earlier, Drew, and that actually makes sense for this group because all of them, I don't think anybody here other than maybe Junichi, I think.
We never see Junichi's parents.
We never do, so we don't know. So, but everybody else, from what we've seen, they all. I just realized this. They all come from single parents because I don't think Brody's mom is
all
around.
Broken homes.
Boko's dad is not around.
Yeah,
and we know Joe's mom is not around.
Yeah.
Because he has a deadbeat dad.
We have no clue on Junichi, so
we have no clue on Junichi, so that's actually kind of interesting. I would have expected something like this in maybe an American production, but this is a Japanese production, and all these kids seem to have single parents. With the possible exception of Junichi. That's interesting. So no wonder they bonded when they did, because they're trying to fill a void.
Similar backgrounds.
Yeah, similar backgrounds, and trying to fill a void. And now they're at the you mentioned coming of age, and you're right, Drew, not Drew, Jacob. This is coming of age because they're at that time where they have to, and that's certainly true for Boko. I think it's probably truest for Boko. What would you guys say?
This is definitely more Boko's story, and he does have the most to overcome in terms of his insecurities. because he's the one who has the most character growth over the entire all 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would also go to the point where like, hold on, what's his name again? Boko. Yeah, Boko. Boko is this be like he's the elementary kid. They're gonna be like we have this interesting dynamic of characters, and they're all bonded because they're kind of outcasts and like rejects of society in some cases, and they're trying to make it through the world, and they're thrust into something they're not expecting, and they're almost expected to save the world, but at the same time they have to grow and mature. And you have this one character who has to grow up incredibly fast with the quote unquote the loss of his best friend and the mounting pressure of having to do the right thing instead of being the kid and shy away and let the adults do it.
Mm-hmm.
But like he has to do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
So there again is this maturity, growing out of adolescence and then becoming an adult in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to do that really rapidly at a younger age.
Right. Oh, well, and we see a lot of rapid change in all of these. And do you think I would argue that even Gamera plays into this because the creators remembered he is the quote unquote friend to all children, and he is friends with these kids like the entire time. Like the whole reason he's doing it, and they even figured out he's protecting us.
Well, I think he's more protecting Boko.
More protecting Boko, but they did,
and they're getting saved because of
their connection,
being close to the guy.
Yeah, which is actually not unlike. I can't remember her name now suddenly, but the girl from the Heisei trilogy, where she has this magical connection to Gamera. Now, but interestingly, and again, they don't explain this as well as they should, but they say the monsters want to eat the children.
Children. What's wrong with
now, it seems like
adults?
later it's just wants to eat Boko, but because Boko's special.
Yeah.
But they...
Well, I mean, they said the other boat in front of them had a bunch of kids that got eaten too.
Yeah,
so
that was dark.
It's like, oh, I didn't know there were any other kids on this journey.
Yeah, that was a little odd.
Yeah, because it'd be like you see where our first the first villain we deal with, Gauss, the little Gauss, be like they're just gobbling everybody up. But then you see whenever the other larger kaiju be like they're going after certain targets, and then be like you see where like throughout the course of the show, it's more like, okay, they're actually targeting kids. And it's like, oh, wow, this is be like, they're again, an outsider of, the world of kaiju and of a Gamera and the whole bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, be like all these kaiju want to eat children, especially this one kid because he's special. And it's just like, whoa, okay, this is dark. This is frightening.
Yeah.
It was definitely a new experience. I would say that
for sure, which I would argue, given what we've been talking about, it makes the title of the final episode, which is also a reference to an Arthur C. Clarke novel. It's called Childhood's End. Seems very fitting with all the stuff that we've been talking about. Because
everyone has to grow up.
Yeah, because they all had to grow up by the end. Metaphorically speaking.
Yes. It'd also be like you look at the fact to be like that, like when you're going, you have to grow up. But you look at so much of like today's world where people are just they're stuck in this childlike mentality, this entitled, the whole bit, where you have characters like this who are adolescent children who are having to make adult decisions and doing adult actions, where you have a world which is trying to be more like children. They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to take the adult actions. They just want everybody else to do what they want for them. Where in this, you're seeing a maturity in a child, in which it's kind of refreshing compared to our more modern world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and I think we could stand to have a few more kids like this in the world who get forced to grow up, and through some of the harshest of circumstances too. You know, we talked about like basically
Agreed.
all of them come from single parents. We get the impression that Brody is the way he is because he has a very tough military dad, which just makes sense.
Yeah.
So he's a military brat. He's got a level of entitlement there. You know, he's in Japan. He thinks he's better than
everybody else.
than everybody else, and has to learn the hard way. You're not.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You're
Through
not.
the equivalent of 6 natural disasters happening to them within 2-week period.
Basically,
Yes.
that'll do a number on you.
Oh, yeah.
That'll do a number on you. And you talk about, being forced to make adult decisions, which is something that never happened in the Showa movies. Like, these kids get involved in the adult affairs, and they just do things, and they don't really grow.
Yeah.
You know, even when they go on adventures, the closest would be Jim and Masao. They're the ones who are actually being proactive, but because they were Boy Scouts and they knew how to handle situations like that. But Jimmy, you and Masao still hijacked the yellow submarine. I'm just saying. Excuses. Ugh.
He only got out of that because Gamera let you out of that force field.
That is true. After forcing everybody to watch stock footage.
So much stock footage.
Yeah. But like I said, I think we have arrived at the theme of the show, and it might be kind of corny, but like I said, it's kind of expected with stuff like this. They used it because it works. Let's be honest. They used it because it works. It just does. Although, funny enough, I don't think I would show this to children that age, as we'll start talking about in the next section.
This is really more teenage level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
It's kind of weird like that because
There is so much blood and gore in this.
Oh, good.
Well, yeah, okay. Then let's get into style then. But the thing is the violence and the blood. That's a Gamera tradition.
Well, I know that because I've seen so much kaiju blood watching these Showa films.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre thing. I think it just speaks to the differences in sensibility. You know, Americans in particular are not gonna make children's entertainment that's that bloody or quite that violent, although some have tried. And then they usually get in trouble for it. Looking at you, Transformers, the movie.
You can't get in trouble for violence if it's against robots.
True.
Samurai Jack taught us that.
True.
Yeah. But
they didn't fight biological things till the Adult Swim season.
Yeah, that is true. But like I was saying, there are some stylistic choices made in this that are just kind of bizarre to me. As I said, this is the cussiest Gamera anything I've seen. At first, I thought it was a product of the dub. So whenever I would come across a particular moment with a particular line where I'm like, really? Then I actually rewound it and switched it to Japanese with subtitles. And 90% of the time, it was just as cussy.
Well, a lot of that still is going to come down to word choice. And I don't know how accurate Netflix aims for this stuff based on age that they're aiming for. They could have just been, we're going to go ahead and go for we're going for PG-13 or whatever in the dub. We'll just aim for that in the sub also. So,
well,
it's a guess.
What's confusing is I'm pretty sure while I was following the news for this that it was announced it was going to be TVMA, but on Netflix itself it says TV-14. But then you actually watch it, and there are some episodes that have multiple F-bombs in it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, guys.
That's because the TV ratings don't have an organization behind it like the Motion Picture Association of America.
True.
These are all the TV ratings are assigned by the people who make it.
Yeah.
True.
So the only thing keeping it from being worse is a lot of people complaining about it.
Yeah. What was that again, Jimmy? Oh, it's the MPA now, not MPAA. They dropped America.
My apologies. I forgot that they're no longer American.
Apparently not. But yeah, so that threw me off. And I don't know how to feel about that. Again, I think they're trying to make this like it's set in 1989. I've already compared it to Stranger Things. I do think they're trying to make this like a 1980s coming of age teenage movie, like a Stand By Me, that sort of a thing, where the kids are going to be very rough, use very rough language. It's mostly Joe. I will say that, and it makes sense.
With Joe, it makes sense.
It makes sense. The other, I think Brody says it too, but that's because he's a jerk.
Well, and he's supposed to be the foul-mouthed American. So.
Yeah, but he's not as foul-mouthed as Joe.
Right.
Joe is the worst. Junichi, I don't think ever talks like that, and
neither does Boko.
Boko does it a couple of times when under extreme duress.
Okay, I forgot that, but okay.
Yeah, it's just, and the funny thing is the kids are cussier than the adults, which is just
that
funny.
is true.
That is funny to me that they are cussier than the adults.
And no one ever corrects them on anything.
No,
never.
They don't. They don't. But since we're on the subject of the voice acting, I mostly watch this in dub. I always with anime, I will start with a dub, and if I think the dub's terrible, I switch to Japanese the first time I watch it.
Yeah. It is so rare nowadays. This is not like the days of like the 90s where the dubs were atrocious. The dubs have gotten a lot better in anime since then.
Right. Try telling that to some of my otaku friends.
I know. I talk to them. I talk to those kind of people all the time. They're all convinced it's all for kids, that they're turning rice balls into donuts.
Rice balls into donuts.
That's one of the lesser known Jesus miracles.
Anyway,
when he turned rice balls into donuts. But I would say I only sampled the Japanese a little bit. In terms of the dub, I actually thought the dub was surprisingly good. Is it the greatest anime dub I've ever heard? No. But it's hard to reach those kinds of levels for me.
It wasn't like it's not the best dub I've heard this in the last year, but it was serviceable. It did not. There may have been a couple of weird translation things. My only real issue, which I'm trying to stay away from that till we actually get to animation, is the lip flaps didn't always match.
Right,
but that'll come back when we actually talk animation.
Yeah. I will say that I don't think
the dub itself, I think, worked very well.
I don't think any of the dub actors give a bad performance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anybody in here was bad or phoning it in or anything like that. They definitely worked hard to find some good actors for the kids, which is hard to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Because they actually do sound like kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if all of them are kids. Sometimes they will. Really sometimes they, for dubs, they will cast women who can pass themselves off as kids.
Well, that's a standard thing in Western cartoons anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, technically Japan does that too, because that's why you now have an 80-year-old woman voicing Goku. Japan
passed away.
Did she? I didn't see that.
That's just wild.
Yeah.
That is just wild. Yeah. So going off of the dub, I would say it's solid work. Nowhere near close to, say, like a Cowboy Bebop dub, where the dub is honestly better than the Japanese.
Flawless.
True.
That's the gold standard right there for anime dubs, is Cowboy Bebop. But yeah, so do you want to save animation for last, or do you want to get into it now?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Let's go ahead and get it over with.
All right, we'll rip the Band-Aid off. Now, I know the animation. The animation has been a sticking point for people, from what I've seen online.
I'm not going to go full rant master on this because I don't feel that harshly about it. Because honestly, I think the problem, because the animation for the monsters is spot on. I have nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you can tell that they definitely prioritize the kaiju.
Definitely where the money went.
Yeah.
And even if you did this as a 2D anime, I still say keep the monsters in this 3D style because it works. And they still felt like they had weight, even though it was moving fast.
Mm-hmm. That was that's what Singular Point did.
Exactly. Now, the humans, on the other hand, I have tried to toss this around in my mind as many ways as I could to figure out what was really the problem here, because this is a similar technique that some Western studios use for 3D, 2D animation, like the Spider-Verse series, but that works while this almost does not. So the closest show I can think of that has this animation style exactly would be Ruby, that Rooster Teeth does.
Agreed.
Right.
That's probably the closest, but like that, they were using the cheapest software they could get because they were a small company when the thing started. So I think that's what it comes down to, is like, I would have preferred the humans to have been animated in 2 dimensions the way you would do a normal anime. Some of that could have been relatively cheap and it would have looked fine, I think. But instead, they not only used 3D, they tried to actually match the mouth shapes of the Japanese dialogue, which makes your English dub look even worse.
Yeah, agreed.
Because that's never going to match up. It's the same problem Akira has with its English dubs, is that it can never match because they used the Japanese dubs mouth flaps, so that mouth shapes instead of just the generic mouth flaps you see in most anime. The animation for what it was, I don't consider bad, but the biggest issue is it just does not work, and some of that looks like it's running in single digit frames per second in a lot of instances.
Yeah, it does.
But let's be honest, it's still better animated than The Legend of Titanic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better dubbed too.
Yeah, definitely better dubbed.
Better dubbed. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I've heard an interesting defense that I've heard is that even with 2D traditional anime, the frame rates are lower compared to compared to Western. But the thing is, that's why it never looks as good with 3D anime, because you run into the same problem with the movie Dragon Ball Superhero, where they did this. They used this what look like the models from the Dragon Ball Fighter Z game for a lot of the character models, because it was in 3D, and then what was that? Berserk OVA.
Yeah,
that modern remake had the same type of problems with it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's unfounded. I get it. The monsters, when they're on screen, you can tell that's where the money went. Their animation is fluid. It looks amazing. The human characters are a bit stiffer by comparison. Now, I will say I've seen far stiffer animation than this.
Yes, true. Yes, and I have seen this animation style with the humans done better. It's just here. It's just like that. It does feel like they ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said,
they had to come to do the rest of it,
right?
And like you said, that this is kind of standard for a Gamera production.
Yeah, where it gets made by the lesser studio, and honestly, the only time I would say that there's an exception to, having a smaller budget and not being hindered by it would honestly be the Heisei trilogy, because the Heisei trilogy was made when you watch those movies. Keep in mind, two of those were being made one was being made two of them were being made, I should say, at the same time as Heisei Godzilla films. The last one was being made at the same time as the Heisei Mothra trilogy. That's Toho. They got buckets of money in Japan, but those Heisei Gamera movies, half the budget, and they look infinitely better.
Oh, that Mothra trilogy is so a thing.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Gamera blew everything that Toho was doing out of the water with a smaller budget. It's incredible what was accomplished there.
Right.
And I would say that the Brave exemplifies that too. The Brave, however, does benefit from having a simpler and more grounded story, but there's still some ambitious special effects sequences in there. It's a little bit fresh in my mind because I rewatched the movie recently to do a video with Bex for one monstrous moment that the OmniViewer was putting on.
But that's the thing about the animation on the monster fights here, because when the monster fights got started, I was like, okay, here's what I'm here for. Let's see some awesome stuff. And I have to say, my favorite moment was when we finally get to see the Bakugan version of Gamera's flight, the giant top. It starts spinning up. I'm like, okay, finally, this is getting good. And then he just goes right smack into Knife Face. I'm sorry, I don't remember the monster's name. Biron, sorry.
Biron. And
he just cuts him straight up in half like a skill saw. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, which we'll get
My
into.
My inner 12-year-old came out so many times watching.
Yeah, we'll get it. Well, you know what? Let's just talk about that right now. The monster. Well, I say fight scenes. It's mostly the monsters in this.
Do we want to let Jacob give his thoughts on the animation? Because I kind of took over most of that.
Sorry.
I would say definitely from an animation standpoint, the use of the CG models for the monsters or the kaiju, again, we'll get into that in a minute, but that's great, minus when they use it on the humans. The humans feel like they're on ones the entire time.
They feel like they're on fives.
On fives.
Ones would have been amazing.
Okay, fives. They were using fives on these characters, and the characters are their expressions are so limited. There are so many points where it's so cringy watching characters try to talk, and it's so just like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing to watch in some cases, and it's just like, oh my gosh, they don't feel like characters. They feel like sometimes they feel like robotics that have been animated, and it's just cringy. Oh my gosh.
For those who don't know what Jacob was talking about when he said animated on ones, when you're animating, every time, what we're referring to is how often the animation is actually updated per film frame.
Yeah.
The really nice, expensive stuff is updated every frame, and that's called animating on ones. Most of your Saturday morning cartoons back in the day were animated on twos because it updated every other frame, which resulted in a little bit more of a jittery kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
This didn't feel like it was even twos.
Because it literally
for the humans.
Like a character would just be
for the humans
would be doing this number, trying to run, and just like they were in 3s and 4s. It's just like they're moving like this. There's no fluidity at all.
I mean, you get to the kaiju fights though, and then all of a sudden we're running at 60 frames per second. We're not even at 30 frames anymore.
Right.
So,
well, in their defense, a lot of anime, especially older anime, again, was not getting, wasn't getting, how did you put it? Animated on ones.
A lot of older anime is animated on twos.
Yeah,
on twos, and that's that's when there's actual movement. That's the thing.
They admittedly, anime does a lot of, especially the older stuff, has a lot of times where the only thing animating is a small little mouth that's only taking up a minuscule amount of the screen.
Yeah,
while the camera pans, while Piccolo is saying, "Goku has got to." Get his chi up to a certain power level.
I was gonna say, anime, older anime used a lot of cheats. To save on animation, and then that just became the standard style. And a lot of modern anime still emulates that, even though they clearly don't have to. Like, they've got the money,
and that works. That works in 2D animation. It doesn't work in 3D. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Yeah,
the fight scenes are different because those are animated like a movie, basically.
Yeah,
right.
But trying to hit those slow trying to hit those keyframes and then staying on those keyframes for long periods of time, and then a quick movement here. It's animatronic almost.
Yeah. Makes me glad that we didn't
We're just lucky this wasn't Five Nights at Freddy's.
Right. It makes me glad we didn't really have any action sequences with the humans other than they would run.
Yeah. And that, oh my gosh.
At least there were some shots where the humans were in shot with the monsters. Yeah. And in those moments, you could tell the monster fight team was in charge of the animation on the humans. And there they looked fine.
Yeah.
But when you get back to the drama animators, and it's like...
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Again, I guess that means we really got to give credit to the writers and the voice actors because, for actually creating some compelling characters and story, despite the limitations of the animation at that point.
True. Like I said, what they should have done was animated the humans in 2D and the monster fights in 3D, and it would have been fine. Just like Singular Point did it.
Yeah. Yeah. It does make it feel uneven. Mm-hmm. It really does, especially since, CGI in Japan is still, I would say, behind what is being produced in the West, particularly in the United States. It's still behind. It's because
the America jumped on it faster.
Right. They jumped on it faster.
At the time, you look at like the 90s, we were lagging behind Japan in 2D animation.
Oh, yeah.
Even the Disney stuff was not matching what anime was doing.
Right. Yeah. And I would argue that when you see a traditionally animated anime, it still leaps and bounds ahead of what a lot of when you see any 2D animation being produced in the United States or just the West, it feels like it's still playing catch up with anime, but the CGI, it's not quite there.
Just go back and look at the film Castle in the Sky. It's the first fully Studio Ghibli film. It's like 1980s, and it puts something like what's a modern? Well, animation wise, it puts Hunchback of Notre Dame to shame.
Yeah,
Hercules doesn't look as good as that film. Mm-hmm. And these are the top Disney films of before Disney dropped 2D.
Yeah, the last 2D animated Disney film was The Princess and the Frog.
And that actually looks good, but that's a CG 2D film.
Yeah,
it was animated on a computer. It was not animated by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's 2D vector, not 2D cell.
Right. But
this is what happens when you get the cartoon guys on here.
Yeah, that's why I'm having you guys on here for this reason, because, and I do think what you're talking about with the differences in the animation, I do think that it definitely affected you more than it affected me. I will admit that. Yeah, well, I am not ignorant of it, but it clearly bothered you more than it did me.
Mm-hmm. Admittedly, we are spoiled.
Right.
Yeah. Because we have watched so much and we're so used to looking for certain things. And so when you see something that's jarring, it strikes a bigger tone.
Right. I totally understand that. But, since we've already been talking about it, let's talk about the kaiju designs and the fight scenes, and then we'll talk about the actual human character designs, as I saw some people were talking about that too.
Yeah.
When things were starting to be revealed. I also, before we continue, because I didn't put this on here, I do want to mention at least briefly the composer for this series, which is Shuji Katayama.
He did a very good job with this.
He did. In particular, I love the fight theme in this. When Gamera shows up, I need that track in my life.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of Pacific Rim-ish, which might be part of why I like it. Yes. But it's something new and unique, and when it starts playing, you get excited because you're like, oh, Gamera's here now.
Well, and the version of the Gamera March that he used in the end
Yes.
credits of episode 6,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this is beautiful for what it is. If it weren't for the fact that I'm hearing the MST3K lyrics on top of this in my head.
Yeah, because there's no lyrics. It's just a cover. It's a very nice cover. It's taken very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
This cover, and you know, it's almost somber, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a very well. This show ends somberly. It's like we had all these great action fight scenes, but it ends sad. So it fits. It really does fit because it is talking about the end of childhood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is actually
Very
something
melancholy.
which is very melancholy, which is something else I want to mention since we're on the style thing. A couple of the episode titles made me as a nerd pretty happy. The first two kind of play off of each other a little bit because it's Over Tokyo and then Undercurrent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Run Silent, Run Deep, which takes place on a submarine. That's episode 3, and that is actually a reference to a novel and a movie from the 50s based on that novel. And I'm trying to remember, there were a couple of really famous actors in it. Let me look that up really quick because it's a very classic movie. It was Clark Gable, Burt Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal of a movie. Yeah, Clark Gable, Burt Lancaster. And then you have just kill in all caps because that's when Giron shows up. But I've already mentioned Childhood's End. Episode 5 is another classic sci-fi novel reference. Its title is The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. That is the title of a Robert Heinlein book. And one that sounds eerily relevant to what's going on because it's about a lunar colony.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check here. Because there's a little bit more to the plot than that. Let me see. So I'm trying to vamp here while I do this. Let's see. About a lunar colony's revolt against absentee rule from Earth. There you go. It's the story in a nutshell there. So that all amused me. But so the music was surprisingly good. I want the soundtrack for this, if for no other reason than I want that fight music. But anyway, the Kaiju.
The music in this was very good.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about we've talked about the fight scenes and how they're animated much more fluidly. I will say this is definitely an example, and a lot of people complained about this with the Godzilla anime trilogy. This really does take advantage of the fact that this is an animated production. It takes advantage of that. It is not limited by what can be done with suits.
Exactly.
It takes full advantage of it. But the funny thing is there are still points where it feels like it's suitmation until you get to some of the wilder things. Like Giron who's probably my favorite redesign out of all of these. Giron is nuts because he just throws himself and he's very limber. So he can throws himself around so he can actually slash with his knife head, and the knife on his head looks like a helmet almost.
It does.
So he was my favorite. Well, my favorite. Which of the monsters was your guys' favorite?
I liked Virus a lot just because I love this idea because like this was the big boss fight. This was to me this felt like the equivalent of Sephiroth at the end of Final Fantasy VII. It's like this is the big fight, and it was so much fun to watch that fight, even though there wasn't anything that was like too crazy. But the idea of him of Virus launching like a rocket, chasing the spaceship, and then Gamera having to come up after him and pretty much shoot his energy wave right smack through the center of him. It's like, oh, that is so cool. But yeah,
Well, we get it, Jimmy. He's your favorite too. You are pleased.
of course he's Jimmy's
Of
favorite.
course you're Jimmy's favorite. What did you
Of course.
think of how they beat him here? Oh, you could have done it in 5 minutes, sure.
I'm sure you could, Jimmy.
I'm sure you could, Jimmy. Yeah, because you beat him once already. We get it. Also, Virus is one of the board members. That's weird.
Yeah, that is very weird.
It is weird, and all he talks about
peculiar.
is his octopoidal fury.
So, I mean, is like Florabella or sitting on the board in his place and he's talking through her or what?
No. They tried causing trouble once, and
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
and then
about that.
my pseudo sister took care of that.
Right.
Yeah, they're not around anymore. No, it's just that freaking squid.
I would assume that would make board meetings very interesting.
Yes.
He's a very angry Sajin, from what I understand. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Well, I guess, yeah, he can get down to human size, so that
he
makes
can.
sense.
He can. Virus can be human sized. Not
If
this
I
one,
was-
but
Yeah.
If I was to say my favorite monster of the episode would be, now correct me in the name because I don't remember the names of these monsters.
Fair.
So the bladed monster,
Huron.
Huron.
Same one
Yeah,
as
I
same
love
one that I
design.
like.
It had like exactly be like you have this monstrous blade, and it's like he's to be like he literally throws himself to use his head as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he opens his mouth has more of that like Blade 2 vampire kind of that homage in a way. I don't know if they're homaging it or just be like, it reminds me so much of that. And just like his design, the way he uses his attacks, that it focuses through the tip of the blade, and like he impales Gamera.
Which he did in he did Virus, whatever, impaled Gamera. Giron
yeah.
slashed at him. He didn't get a chance to actually stab him, for what I can remember, but he slashed him. Yeah, he slashed him good too.
So, yeah.
And actually, that's the crazy thing of this one. Kind of like in Gamera 3, spoiler warning, Gamera gets his arm cut off, and it doesn't grow back.
Yeah, that threw me off.
That was surprising.
I was waiting for it to grow back, and it doesn't grow back. For an episode and a half, he has one arm.
That actually brings up one question that Jacob actually asked me last week, and I didn't have a good answer for him. Why is it in flight mode he has flippers, but on ground he's got claws?
That is a Heisei thing, starting in Gamera 2. The thought is that using the flippers makes him more aerodynamic.
Right, but where do the flippers come from?
I don't know. He changes his hands.
So he's a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Minor
Apparently.
shapeshifter. Okay.
Or as Drew said, it'd be like he's a magical turtle.
Pretty much. Magical turtle.
He's a
Yeah.
magical turtle. Of course, he's a magical turtle. But looking,
Like I
I've got
said,
the
Prince of
silhouette posters for all the kaiju on here. I will tell you, Giron is my favorite. The one that's probably the most radically redesigned compared to the original is Zigra, the shark. He looks almost more like a manta ray in this. He also, other than I think it sounded like he said something in some sort of unintelligible language once. In the original movie, he could talk.
Yeah.
Because he was basically an alien overlord. And Virus, whatever, is not, he's just a crazier version of his original design. They make him more Lovecraftian in this. And Gauss, it's different, but it doesn't diverge too much from what we've seen of Gauss before. Other than the super Gauss that we see in episode 6, the one that mutates a bit, it starts looking a little bit more like Zetus from Gamera the Brave with the big hood-looking thing on his head. Otherwise, not all that different. Jiger is recognizable as Jiger, but Jiger almost feels like a downgrade compared to the original. Jiger is bonkers in the her original movie, because Jiger's female. Jiger is insane.
I think
Jiger has
that's
a
one of those I haven't
laundry list of
watched yet.
superpowers and does things that seemed like it was anticipating other scarier movies. Like Jiger can shoot a beam off of her horn that turns people to skeletons. And the most notable thing, and they bring it back in this, but they nerf it, is the blade tail. In the original movie, her blade tail, and she could shoot needles out of her nose, and she would do things like shoot those through Gamera's wrist so he can't go into his shell.
It sounds like it hurts.
Oh, it's painful to watch. It's very, very painful to watch. But anyway, but then the most infamous thing Jiger could do is that her blade tail can inject eggs into its victims.
Ew.
Basically,
Alien.
Gamera versus
Alien.
Jiger was Alien before Alien.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Because then the Kennys have to go inside Gamera in a submarine to kill the babies. And apparently the inside of Gamera is a cave with breathable air. It makes no sense.
Because of course it is.
Because of course it is. It makes no sense. Anyway, so Jiger's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So this version feels nerfed by comparison. I thought they were going to make Jiger a horde beast at first, but that doesn't last very long. Gauss is closer to a horde beast in this, at least in episode 1. Episode 2, no, because it's just one crazy Gauss.
Yeah.
So with all of that in mind, that's why Giron ends up being my favorite of the bunch, because again, he's recognizable and they do a lot of clever and cool things with this new redesign, whereas the rest of them, not quite as much. They look more predictable, or it's a downgrade, I would argue. Especially Jiger. But that's my take. You guys have anything to say about that?
No, I don't have any cards to play into it. So,
Well, what about you, Drew? You've seen most of the Showa movies.
Release the virus. That's all I have to say.
Release the virus. Sure, you put that on a t-shirt. You can put that on a t-shirt. Now, like I said, they take advantage of the fact that this is animated for the kaiju fights, and good grief, they are brutal at points. They get a little more brutal than I was expecting. Like I said, Gamera loses an arm. When Gamera is fighting those Gauss at the beginning, he just flat out squishes them. Squishy.
When Giron gets sliced in half, you can see his guts going all the way up. It's like, wow. But I animated a lot for this shot.
They
Can y'all
did.
put some of this money towards your human characters.
yes, please.
Yeah. But here's the thing, as much as they build up Virus as this Lovecraftian horror, this final boss, that fight felt a little anticlimactic.
There was a lot other going on in that during that battle than just Gamera versus Virus.
That is true, but it basically
it
basically, as wild as it is, because technically what's going on is crazy, because Virus can fly like a rocket, and then Gamera follows him. And then basically rams, but then it just ends with him just ramming right through him. And there's a lot of drama going on for sure, because Gamera is trying to save the kids, because Virus is trying to get the kids in the space shuttle, which then prompts Joe to have to sacrifice himself. But
I mean, part of the reason I liked Virus is the redesign on him, because it looks, it's a squid, it's a giant squid, but it looks like it looks like it's almost made out of stone.
Right.
But anyway.
Right. Yeah. But like I said,
the fight itself, it's admittedly not as exciting.
Yeah, not quite. And the Zigra fight, there's a couple of them, but the thing is that one is underwater, which, that's a little hard to make, extremely exciting. And then there's the one on land, but Zigra is at a major disadvantage. This version, anyway, is at a major disadvantage on land. Not quite as exciting.
Yeah.
I would say not only is Giron my favorite of the redesigns, he's also my favorite kaiju fight in the show. Personally. What about you guys?
No, all sounds good to me.
Yeah, same.
All right. All righty then. So let's talk at least a little bit about the action. I know we've been taking a dump on the human characters. Oh, getting a warning that my laptop wants to die. My apologies for the weird sound effect, kaiju lovers. But anyway, let's talk about the character designs of our humans at least a little bit. I know some people weren't, when they were first revealed, weren't the most impressed with them. Am I going to sit here and say that these are the most memorable anime character designs I've ever seen? No.
No.
But I don't think they were meant to be. They're supposed to be ordinary people.
The character designs are when, you know, we bashed on the animation itself.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there are instances where, you know, parts of the scene are not moving and everyone's just kind of, and everyone who's not, you know, the active animated one is frozen in place. And in those instances, I would forget that I was looking at a 3D image because the character design worked so well as in that format. The character designs, I think, actually work fairly well. The only real issues is when you see one at a weird angle because of the 3D. And not to mention a lot of the hair in this does some weird things.
Yeah, 3D anime hair can get cumbersome.
Yeah, it looks like everyone's got dreads. Multicolored dreads.
Yeah. Yeah, which might explain why most of the
especially Junichi
hair.
Yeah, which might explain
yeah.
why most of the characters have simple haircuts.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think the wildest hair in here is probably Emiko.
Yes, but it works for her. It's a very smart and smart hair design, intelligent looking hair design. It works for her as a scientist, and thankfully she does not have a lot of instances where that hair needs to be animated crazily.
Right.
True.
I will say one weird thing I noticed about her character design, because I'm a firm believer that when you design a character, it should tell you something about the character themselves.
Yeah.
You don't just make a character to look cool just to look cool. It should tell you something about them that's actually part of their character. And one of the things that I thought was that was kind of odd about Emiko is that she's supposed to be this brilliant scientist lady, but she's walking around in shorts. Not only that, it's shorts that she has clearly hiked up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. So I was like, is this supposed to be because she's young and wants to show off how pretty she is? Because she does do that once, and maybe that was the idea. That's supposed to ingratiate her to people if she flaunts herself a little bit.
I think it's because she's secretly the evil conspiracy princess, and she knows she can get away with whatever she wants.
Basically.
True.
She does. She didn't necessarily need to walk around in a lab coat the whole time. She could have walked around in anything and still be looked upon as a respected scientist because that's what everyone in her organization saw her as, or was essentially acting like she was. But she did just as almost as cover for the kids.
Right. Right. And I will say this about the animation. Should have brought this up. The Ultraman anime on Netflix notably had the same problem, except in that case, it would just be when the characters get into fight scenes, suddenly the animation gets better. When they're not in a fight scene, it's kind of stiff. And that was actually made by a higher profile studio, even, I think.
That's why I'm not really blaming the animation studio for this animation.
Yeah.
I just think it's a weird sticking point for style.
It was Production IG, and they know how to make good stuff. So that one's a little weird.
3D just looks really weird on anime.
Yeah,
it just style character.
Yeah,
it just does.
It does, but just because of the aesthetic that everyone keeps wanting to use. You know, because
if they had made an original look for the characters that fit the 3D better, I could work with it.
Yeah.
but it's because we're still using mostly minimalist anime design. A lot of times it just feels like I'm looking at animatronics.
Yeah,
True.
I can understand that. So, anything else to say about style before we move on? I think we've covered all. Let me get us back to that. So I think we've covered all the major things there.
Yeah, I think so.
Nothing to say on character designs, Jacob?
Character designs, I think we all kind of hit it. Was like the use of 3D for the monsters. Great idea. Not so much for the human characters. Design wise, be like, yeah, they look like, normal characters. There's no like outrageous, be like this person's wearing a cape for some reason. But like design wise, it's very simple. It's very to the point. It has it kind of tells you a little bit of who the character is, but doesn't give away everything in some capacities.
Yeah.
But overall, be like the design's good.
Right.
I will throw kudos towards the character design for Junichi.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you don't realize just looking at the character that's a girl.
Yeah.
But yet, right after they give it away, you see it.
Yeah.
You don't normally get that a lot of times with an androgynous character like that in designs.
Because here's my thought. Here's my thought on in how do you pronounce your name?
Androgynous?
No,
Junichi?
Junichi. Like Junichi's character. Like in the first 2 episodes, be like just played as a normal character, like it's the character is a boy. But once you realize at the end of episode 3, going into 4, be like, and then you start to notice, be like the way her eyelashes work, or how she moves her shoulders, or something like that.
It's very her femininity is very subtle.
Yeah, because they start to play into that more.
Yeah,
like once you get the revelation, be like, oh, she's actually a girl. They start playing into it more,
right?
In some very subtle ways, subtle. They give the more femininity of her character, to come out.
Okay, all right. Well, we've been at this for quite some time. I haven't seen any questions in the chat, so we've had a pretty quiet chat throughout this live stream, which is fine. So I was gonna use this time to take questions from the chat. Otherwise, I would say we can just give our final thoughts on this. I will simply say there were a couple of points where the show did surprise me, but I mostly got what I expected, and honestly, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think everything needs to be groundbreaking. Some of the best Godzilla films are ones that don't do anything new. They just do what the franchise does really well. Case in point, Mothra versus Godzilla. Mothra versus Godzilla does nothing new compared to the movies that came before it, but what it does extremely well. And I would say for the most part, this does Gamera pretty well,
Yeah.
And that's all I would really want. That's all I really want. Maybe season 2, if they do a season 2, they can try breaking some new ground. Give it a try.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
if they get a season 2.
Yeah, if they get a season 2, or if they make a new movie, do something groundbreaking. Yeah. There hasn't really been anything truly groundbreaking in Gamera since the Heisei trilogy. As much as I love The Brave is just is basically just a Showa movie, but good. So, that wasn't necessarily revolutionary, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to be an extremely sincere kids movie that dealt with some very, very serious subject matter. This doesn't quite go there. This is more of an action romp, coming of age, stuff like that. But that is, like I said, it's perfectly fine. It's what I expected. And sometimes that's all you need to do. What do you guys think?
You're right in that this is not really doing anything revolutionary with either kaiju or even animated kaiju. I think it fits. It doesn't need to be, though. Like you said, if we're going to use this as an introduction to what Gamera could be in the 21st century, right? I guess it's not just the 21st century, because they have had 21st century Gamera films. One.
Gamera.
I mean, I'll say in the Reiwa era. I think this is a good introduction for that. We can save the really spectacular stuff for or revolutionary stuff for like a season 2 or another movie. This is just, it serves as a good interaction to what Gamera is. Gamera is the friend to all children. The fights are bloody, and it's not really meant to be a deep series. It's meant to be a fun series.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I again, coming at it more like, you know, a Padawan when it comes to like something new and understanding. At first, like watching this movie is like, I really didn't enjoy it in some cases. But I think in the context of this conversation, I've come to, it's like, oh, okay, this TV show's got a lot more layers. It's a very fine onion that you get deeper and deeper into it, and you understand the depth and the sorrow of the characters and what Gamera means, and what the children who are almost officially just, they're num-nums to the kaijus. But there are parts of this be like I understand be like more the simplicity of it. I think for me, it was like someone who is coming into it without having full information about everything. It was very frustrating to not have like everything I need to understand it, because they leave everything kind of open to interpretation, or be like, oh, you should know this already, or in some capacity. But I enjoyed certain parts of it. Overall, I kind of enjoyed it in some ways. When it got to the 5th and 6th episode, it was more like, oh, okay, we're gonna dump everything on you, and that got a bit annoying. But I think if they would have, you know, paced it out, made it 12 episodes, and, you know, kind of gave it breath and gave it some room to breathe, like a fine wine, I think this would have been a far better show. But I think if we're cutting it down to the core of what kind of show it is, it's suitable. And I think if they do have a sequel, give it more time to breathe. You know, let the oxygen out a little bit less, and draw the story out a little bit more, and don't use the 3D animation for the human characters. Use a different attempt. That's just me. But overall, I think it's a suitable series. Is it something I'm going to go back and watch? Probably not. But it was enjoyable to watch for the podcast.
Right. Then let me ask you this, Jacob. Given that this is your first exposure to Gamera, has it inspired you to look into other Gamera media, like the films?
I think in some ways, yes. In some ways that I think it would be interesting to see. Now, granted, how far back does Gamera go?
Just as far back as Godzilla.
No, the mid 60s. He came about 10 years after Godzilla.
Okay, so mid 60s,
1965.
Okay,
but there are far less films.
Yeah, there's 12.
Okay, so if I was to watch a Gamera film from the past, what would you recommend?
The Heisei trilogy and the Brave. I think that is not only top shelf, top tier Gamera. It's the Heisei trilogy in particular is arguably peak kaiju cinema. It is some of the best examples of the genre you will ever see. And that's why it's so dramatic, where Gamera went from some of the worst in the genre to arguably the best. Right up there with some of the best Godzilla films as the peak of the genre. It's incredible. Yeah, the Heisei trilogy is incredible stuff.
Yeah, I would say it's more not bashing on this show at all, but I think of Powerhouse Animation and what they did with not Monster Island. That's your show.
Skull Island.
Yeah, Skull Island. Using Skull Island. The animation I love the animation in Skull Island. So I wish they would have maybe used more of a hybrid of that with the 3D, with the kaijus, the monster fights. I think that would have been a fantastic and blended it some way that would be more cohesive with each other. But that's just me. That's me being critical of the show. But like there are parts that I enjoy. I think they rushed the very end of it, and so it was kind of like meh. But there's still parts of it more. I'm like, what the heck just happened?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's something to be like, I've watched it. I may never come back to it, but you never know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And now we actually do have a comment to go over here from Enshoma. He says, I saw the series. It could have been stronger, but was still a lot better than I feared it could have been. Hopefully, however, it will lead to bigger and better Gamera-related things in the future. I'm hoping so as well. I'd love to see another movie. I would rather have another movie than a season 2 of this, especially if it is going to be Kaneko.
Yeah.
So, in a weird way, I want to support this show, and I hope this podcast, this live stream, contributes to that. I just want to see Gamera succeed again. I really do. And you know, this grand return, like I said, doesn't really break any new ground, but it reintroduces Gamera to a new audience. And I hope that that means we can get more in the future, if nothing else. You know, this is the test. You know, this is seeing if the interest is there. And if the interest is there, we've got some big things coming down the road.
With any luck.
Yeah.
Sorry, my headset's acting up. Sorry, guys. There we go. Oh, trying to get it back. There we go. We'll do it live. Anyway. Oh. We'll do it live. No lip from you, Jimmy. You should have checked the chords before we started. Anyway, what were you guys saying?
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if, you know, because I couldn't hear anything for a second. But anyway, and also Enshoma would like you guys to know that the 90s trilogy is currently free to view on Tubi, last I checked. You can also watch it on Amazon Prime. But
true.
Also,
or you can be like me and have the Blu-rays.
I was going to say, Jacob, just watch the Blu-rays with Drew. Yeah.
Okay. I will let you borrow them. You know that.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping things up, gentlemen. All right. This is now. Oh my gosh, really? StreamYard, be silly like that. Come the heck on. All right, gentlemen. This is the part where, well, actually, you know, I'm going to give my patrons some shout outs first. So give me a second here. I'm just going to rattle off their names to save us a wee bit of time right now. So
I should double check mine while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you do that. You do that while I find my list. Where is my list? There we go.
Where did my Patreon app go?
Okay. So currently our the MIFV patrons are Travis Alexander, Danny DeMana, Eli Harris, Chris, actually not quite, Bex from Redeemed Otaku, Damon Noyes, these guys, Eric Anderson of Nerd Chapel, Ted Williams, Winja the Ninja, Brad Batman Edelman, Christopher Reiner, the Indiscreet one, I think that's how you're supposed to say it, Jake Hambrick, Edwin Gonzalez, Matt Walsh, but not that Matt Walsh, Jonathan Courtwright, and of course, Tofu Fury. Oh, who do you guys got?
Our patrons are Francisco and Ashley Ruiz, Book of Gaming, and PaulJPowers.com. Woo!
And Shoma says, I don't apologize for the wizard versus detective scene in Silverfoot. I understood that reference.
I haven't watched that film, but I heard the review.
Yeah. Whew, that was a thing. But yeah, see ya, Enshoma. Thanks for stopping by. All right. So you got your patrons out. All right, now we come to the all-important shameless self-promotion, because I'm going to be forever associated with that phrase for the rest of my life now.
Well,
good idea. We will put it on a t-shirt.
I mean, you are the first person I've ever heard admit that it's shameless self-promotion and not just trying to be polite about it.
I swear I heard it. I heard the phrase somewhere else. But anyway, what do you got, gentlemen?
All right, so because this is a crossover with the Cellcast podcast, I have to mention that the Cellcast half of this is a proud member of the Culture Box Media Network. You want to hear more about that, go check out culturebox.media. Otherwise, we do a podcast called the Cellcast where we review animated movies and television. You want to hear more Nathan on our show, go check out Titanic. The Legend of the Titanic.
Not Titanic, The Legend Goes On.
You can understand why that confuses in my head.
Yes.
Ironically, the version, the Titanic animated Titanic movie with the rapping dog was the more respectful version.
True. That episode we did with Nate was so much of a rant master.
That was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, that episode was unhinged.
I mean, it was so unhinged that I had to re-edit it after I released it. So I don't know what happened there.
We broke it. We broke the internet, guys.
Yeah,
we broke it.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, some of it came off our leash.
Even though literally the episode before that, it was titled, "Please don't tell me you broke the internet." But yeah, that's what we do. You can also follow me on Facebook. Look for my photography at Drew's Photo Bin on Facebook. And yeah, other than that, what do you got, Jacob?
You can follow me on Facebook at Jacob B. Heron. You can also follow me my art page at Jacob's Daily Art Corner, where I try to draw each and every day. I don't get around to it so much, but I'm trying to start doing merchandise, trying to do, shirts, hats, whatever, trying to, expand my brand in some capacity.
He's trying to make money so he doesn't have to work at the grocery store anymore.
That'd be nice.
Let's not work there.
Yeah, that would be nice. But you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram, Jacob B. Heron. Jacob B. Heron, as in, Bradley. Other than that, that's all I got so far.
All right. And if you enjoy the Monster Island Film Vault, definitely check out my other two podcasts, Henshin Men, a podcast about the appreciation of Japanese superheroes and their high-flying, high-kicking adventures. Drew was a temporary co-host on that show for a hot minute.
Indeed.
Yep.
I saw another monster get cut in half in that on that show.
And when you start watching more Ultraman, you'll see other dismemberments of Kaiju.
I'm halfway through the first Ultraman, so
yeah. Well, it's the later ones where they start doing that.
Well, I'm sure it gets kooky.
Oh, it does. Especially when you get to the 70s. 70s Ultra is a trip. Anyway, and then also check out The Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise, which Drew was also just on.
Yes.
For Car Ranger.
I was on 2 months ago, and now it's out.
Yeah.
But weird things happen.
Weird things do happen. That is a podcast I co-host with Michael Hamilton, who's also been on this show, where we talk about Power Rangers. We were talking about Super Sentai at that point while we were waiting for 30th anniversary Power Rangers material to come out, which will be happening very soon because we already had the 30th anniversary special. Now we're getting Cosmic Fury, the 30th season. So that'll be a big episode when we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
I
still need to finish Dino Fury.
Yeah. I am also one of the actors in Carl Dutton's stable over at Scyther Inc. Productions. I am on both Power Rangers, the audio drama, and recently, the X-Men audio drama playing, of all people, the Merc with a Mouth.
Yes.
I still can't get over that. And I'm actually auditioning to be in an Avengers spinoff for the X-Men show. We'll see how that goes.
Deadpool could show up in that.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Deadpool could show up in that, but I've auditioned for other characters. Audition for other characters. And also check out my author page, nathanjsmarchand.com, if you're interested in learning more about my books or reading a blog that is in desperate need of being updated. Because I'm not just a podcaster, I'm a writer. Yeah, you should try reading some of them. Just saying. Have you even read one yet? I gave you 3 of them for Christmas when I first came to the island. Oh, my gosh.
I've got a dumb question. Does Jimmy even read?
Ooh.
Spicy.
Spicy. Yes. Do not to anger the Jimmy. Jeez. He's a little.
I didn't say you were illiterate, Jimmy. I was just questioning whether you enjoyed reading for fun.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that you had to have corrective surgery for, what was it again? That sounds made up, but anyway. All right. Anywho, so yeah, definitely check out all of those if you want to learn where to follow the podcast on the socials. Listen to the credits if you want to learn how to contact the podcast and send us feedback, because we love reading feedback from listeners. Also, listen to the credits. All right. And speaking of credits, Jimmy, cue 'em.
You can follow Jacob on his Facebook at Jacob B. Heron. His Facebook page, Jacob's Daily Art Corner, where he tries to draw each and every day. His Instagram at Jacob B. Heron. His Twitter at Jacob Heron. And his Letterboxd at Jacob Heron. You can find Drew on Facebook at Drew Dodgen. His Facebook page, Drew's Photo Bin, to see his photography. His Letterboxd page at GGeorge759. His Twitter at GGeorge759. And Instagram at Drew Dodgen. You can like us on Facebook at the Cellcast Podcast, on Twitch at the Cellcast Gaming, on YouTube at Cellcast, on Twitter at cast_cell. The Cellcast can be found at Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or anywhere else fine podcasts are downloaded from. Please rate and review us where you found us, and also on Podchaser. Email us at thecellcastpodcast@gmail.com. The Cellcast is a proud member of both the Pop Americana and Culture Box media networks. For more information, please see the link in the description. Our theme song is Drop and Roll by Silent Partner. And remember, that's Cell with a single L.
Gamera is really neat. Gamera is filled with meat. We've been eating Gamera.
Bum, 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 bum. Yummy children. Nom, 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 nom.